Good morning and welcome to this full council of the 7th of May 2025. I'd like to welcome all those present in the chamber and those watching online. We will take comfort breaks as necessary, and I'd just like to ask the clerk to confirm any apologies and take a roll call of those joining online. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, everyone. We have formal apologies from Councillor Frank Smith. I'm not aware of any other apologies for today's meeting. In terms of those members online, if I can just confirm that we have Councillor Cuthbert.
I'm here.
And Bailey.
Present, good morning.
And I think Councillor Braun as well.
Yes, good morning.
Are there any other members who are online?
Yes, myself.
Thank you. Everyone else, Provost, is present in the
Me as
chamber.
well, Scott. Sorry, Ian James.
Sorry, Councillor James. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest, and I will begin by declaring an interest. I'm declaring a financial interest in item 9 and we'll be leaving the room for that. The Deputy Provost will take that. And I'm also declaring a connection for transparency only on the advice of the Monitoring Officer as a board member of UHI Perth in item 6. Bailey, first of all, please.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning. Similar to you, a connection in the interest of transparency to item 6, arising from the fact that I'm a trustee of the Tay and Earn Trust, which is a delivery partner of some of the leisure and tourism aspect of the Tay Cities deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. I don't see any other interests. Okay, thank you very much. Item 2A1 is a request for a deputation. We received a late request yesterday from Ms Fiona Campbell on behalf of the Association of Scotland Self-Caterers to make a deputation on item 9. I am minded to accept this. Is Council happy to agree to hear the deputation? Thank you. Members, item 3A31 is the minute of the special council meeting of the 26th of February 2025. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the special council meeting? Thank you. Members, item 3.2 is the minute of the meeting of 5th of March 2025. Are members happy to agree that meeting? Good. Thank you. Members, item 4 is notice of motion, and we have a motion by Bailey Ahern. Bailey Ahern, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you very much, Provost. And I apologise before I start if I mispronounce any names, etc. Provost, I'm delighted to be able to bring this motion to Council today as a veteran and as Armed Forces and Veterans Champion for Perth and Kinross. I was at Holyrood on the 27th of March when a similar members' business motion was debated and given cross-party support. The 300th anniversary of the Black Watch is something we can be proud of in Perth, given its historical links to Perth and Kinross. Perth was the home of the regimental depot, including the museum, till 1961, and continued to be the home of the regimental headquarters and museum. In 1947, the regiment received the Freedom of Perth. In 1725, 6 companies were raised by General George Wade, comprising of loyal clans, including the Campbells, Grants, Frasers and Munros, and formed the Highland Watches to police the Highlands following the 1715 Jacobite Rebellion. And 4 further companies were raised in 1739 to form the Regiment of the Line, which first mustered at Aberfeldy. Throughout this period, the companies began being referred to as Amfrican and Du, or the Black Watch. It did not take long for the Black Watch to gain its worldwide reputation for fearlessness in the face of the enemy. In the regiment's very first engagement at the Battle of Fontenoy in 1745, a French officer described the Black Watch as Highland furies who rushed in on us with more violence than ever did the sea driven by tempest. Despite the British defeat, the regiment's valiant conduct was noticed by the Duke of Cumberland, who was greatly impressed by its Highland style of fighting. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, the Black Watch was heavily involved in every major British campaign across the globe, starting with the 7 Years' War in North American continent. During the subsequent American War of Independence, the Black Watch helped to inflict a crushing defeat on George Washington's forces at the Battle of Long Island in 1776. The Black Watch was in the thick of fighting during the 1815 Battle of Waterloo, which saw the final defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, paving way for Britain's rise to global dominance. In the Second World War, soldiers of the Black Watch were victims of the German blitzkrieg in France, but the regiment rebounded, contributing to the defeat of Erwin Rommel's forces at the Battle of El Alamein, one of the major turning points of the war, and participating in the invasions of Sicily and Normandy and also Burma, where Field Marshal Wavell, or Earl Wavell, was the most distinguished Black Watch officer who was Commander-in-Chief and Viceroy of India. In 1963, the Black Watch Pipes and Drums and Military Band toured the USA and were invited to play at the White House. 9 days later, President Kennedy was assassinated, and Jacqueline Kennedy requested that the Black Watch Pipe Major and 8 pipers play at the funeral. They led the cortege from the White House to the Washington Cathedral. The Black Watch has won such renown that in December 1964, during an Anglo-American summit, President Lyndon Johnson asked the British Prime Minister, Harold Wilson, to send a Black Watch to Vietnam, a request that was politely refused. Just as they had been active during the rapid expansion of the empire, soldiers from the Black Watch were also the last troops to leave Hong Kong garrison during the handover in 1997, marking the end of the British Empire. Many changes and reforms have impacted on the Black Watch over centuries, including the highly controversial merger in 2006 of the distinct Scottish regiments into the Royal Regiment of Scotland. We must never forget the names of those regiments lost in that merger. The motto of the Black Watch is Nemo me impunum lascit, Latin for no one provokes me with impunity. This motto, also shared with the Order of the Thistle, reflects the regiment's unwavering resolve and tradition in defending Scotland. 14 members of the Black Watch have received the Victoria Cross, the highest decoration in the British military. And the last Victoria Cross awarded to a member of the regiment was to William Speakman Pitt, known as Bill Speakman. He was born and brought up in Altrincham, Cheshire, and educated at Wellington Road School in Timberley. He was 24 years old and a private in a Black Watch Royal Highland Regiment, attached to the 1st Battalion King's Own Scottish Borderers during the Korean War, when following the deed took place at the United Hill, for which he was awarded the VC. At dusk on the 4th of November 1951, during the Second Battle of Marian San on the ridge known as Hill 217 in Marisan San, the section holding the left shoulder of the company's position had been seriously depleted by casualties and was being overrun by the enemy. Speakman, on his own initiative, filled his pockets with grenades and went forward, pelting the Chinese with them. Having thrown all the grenades he then returned home for more. Inspired by his actions, 6 men joined him in collecting a pile of grenades and followed him in a series of charges. He broke up several enemy attacks, causing heavy casualties, and despite being wounded in the leg and shoulder, continued to lead the charge after charge. When they ran low on ammunition, they had to resort to throwing stones and ration tins, and according to legend, beer bottles. The enemy was kept at bay long enough to enable his company to withdraw safely. The press nicknamed him the Beer Bottle VC, something he disliked for fear it suggested that he and colleagues drank beer while on duty. The beer was in fact used to cool the gun barrels. Although his award was made by King George VI, Speakman was the first VC invested by Queen Elizabeth II. While serving in Malaya with the SAS, Borneo and Radfan, he was promoted to sergeant, and in Malaya, he was involved in finding and returning the bodies of 2 soldiers killed in a clash with the communist insurgents in the jungle. Standing 6'6", he was nicknamed Big Bill. So once again, Provost, I thank you for allowing me to bring this motion to celebrate the 300th anniversary of the Black Watch. This year is also the 80th anniversary of the Second World War in Europe. Celebrations started on Monday, and tomorrow actually marks VE Day. I hope many of you will join local communities tomorrow in the celebrations, starting with a short service at the War Memorial in St John Street, and then at the 51st Memorial and the North Inch, culminating at 9 p.m, where 7 beacons will be lit across Perth and Kinross, along with many others in the UK. And on Sunday, there will be a service in St John's Kirk at 11 o'clock with stalls and other events outside the Kirk Museum from 10 a.m. Thank you, Provost, for allowing me to bring this motion.
Thank you, Baillie Ahern. Councillor Duff to second.
Thank you, Provost. I would like to echo the extraordinary legacy of one of Scotland's most distinguished regiments as set out in the address by Baillie Ahern. Since its formation in 1725, during a time of instability in the Highlands, it has been synonymous with fierce courage, unfailing discipline, and an enduring sense of duty to Crown and country. The Black Watch stands proudly among the roll of famous British and Scottish regiments and takes its name from Frickandu in Gaelic, or the Black Watch, from its distinctive dark green and black regimental tartan. As we have heard, the first muster of the Black Watch Regiment took place in 1740 on the banks of the River Tay, close to the then recently constructed Wades Bridge in my hometown of Aberfeldy, an area I am proud to serve as councillor. A large boulder cairn with a Black Watch soldier at the summit, complete with flintlock musket and Highland sword, now stands close to the spot where they first mustered. It was built in 1887 through public subscription and contains a plaque highlighting many of their 151 battle honours. The regiment's connection to Aberfeldy is part of the town's rich and proud heritage, and as a 10-year-old boy, I can vividly remember Saturday, the 5th of September 1970, when the freedom of the borough of Aberfeldy was conferred on the regiment. A large crowd gathered in the area around the Black Watch Monument on a beautiful sunny day to watch the ceremony. The ranks of the Black Watch soldiers, with their red hackles standing proudly, together with their pipes and drums, were assembled in front of the monument. The Provost of Aberfeldy, at the head of the town council, reading out the scroll conferring the freedom of the town on the regiment. Then the march passed and the parade through the town. Over the period of 300 years, the Black Watch has gained a reputation for their Highland honour, fearless gallantry, discipline on the battlefield, and indisputable loyalty. It is a testament to the courage and sacrifice shown by the soldiers of the Black Watch that they have been awarded no fewer than 14 Victoria Crosses, Britain's highest military decoration for valour. The Black Watch continues to this day as 3 Scots, the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. It is currently based at Fort George near Inverness, but there are very welcome plans afoot to relocate the battalion to Leuchars in Fife, which would be closer to their traditional recruiting grounds across Perthshire, Angus, Dundee and Fife, and would physically reconnect the regiment with the communities from which it draws its support. That would be a very welcome move for the future of the Black Watch. Provost, at this point, I would also like to make mention of Bahousie Castle, the Black Watch's home here in Perth. The historic castle became a symbol for the regiment's legacy, with a public campaign in 2008 raising a remarkable £3.5 million to transform the site into a 5-star award-winning visitor attraction, with its new museum and military archive. The site has been a fantastic success and has welcomed nearly 1 million visitors from around the world over the past decade or so. Like Baillie Ahern, I was privileged to attend the Scottish Parliament along with a large number of Black Watch veterans to hear the parliamentary debate led by Liz Smith, CBE MSP. Tributes upon tribute were paid by all parties across the chamber to the Black Watch, and it gives me great pleasure to second this motion, which marks the 300th anniversary of this proud regiment. Provost, the Black Watch has been at the forefront of military service both in the darkest hours of war and in a peacekeeping role, in lands at home and abroad, from the Highlands of Scotland to the fields of Waterloo, from the Western Front to the hills of Korea and the streets of Basra. As we approach the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, let us honour the sacrifices made not only by the soldiers of the Black Watch, but also those made by the men and women in all branches of our armed forces, many of whom have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms and way of life. In recognition of all those who have dedicated their lives to the service of this country, let us pledge as a council to do all that we can to offer our full support to our armed forces veterans and their families. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Deputy Provost with the first comment.
Thank you very much, Provost. It would, of course, be, or I think we all recognise it would be a better world if we lived in one where armed forces were not required. However, history has proved time and again that we need to resort to armed forces on occasions to defend our liberties and values. But without doubt, the Black Watch have served well over 300 years. Not many people realise, though, that the first battle honours that the Black Watch were awarded were for Guadeloupe in 1759, Martinique in 1762, and Havana in 1763. I think we were fighting the French and the Spanish in those days, but certainly in those days, a posting to the Caribbean was regarded as a punishment posting, given the heat and all the disease. Certainly not the same attitude as when I was lucky enough to go to Belize in 1988, when it was regarded as something of a jolly. In the First World War, the Black Watch as a regiment had at one time in the First World War 22 battalions serving at the same time. In those days, that was 22,000 soldiers. That's actually more infantry soldiers than the British regular army has now in its entirety. And we should wonder whether that's sensible at the moment in the world we live in. And as a final point, in 1941, the 2nd Battalion of the Black Watch was serving in the Burma garrison. They thought they were very lucky to be in Burma until the day after Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese invaded Burma. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost. Bailey McLaren next, please.
Thank you, Provost. The Liberal Democrats recognise the historic importance of the Black Watch Regiment within both Perth and Kinross and Scotland, a proud regiment which is part of the wider military family. The regiment formed at a time of unrest to provide policing and peacekeeping, mustering in Aberfeldy, recruiting from loyal clans. Regiment recruitment continued to be strong within Perthshire over the centuries, and its Highland Perthshire roots still remain strong today. The Liberal Democrats fully recognise and value the service over the 300 years of the regiment, a regiment who have courageously served on battlefields with grit, bravery and loyalty in unimaginable conditions, certainly for us in 2025. Many to fall in the fight, whose sacrifice will forever be remembered, along with their family's sacrifice. A further reminder can be seen throughout the cemeteries of Perthshire of this brave regiment. Military service impacts. Within the many stories of gallantry over the centuries are families who have lost loved fathers, brothers and sons, changing a family overnight, or welcoming home a traumatised member through life-changing injury or battle exposure. The Liberal Democrats fully support the needs of these veterans and families within Perthshire, as the motion brought forward today states. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey McLaren. Councillor Massey next, please.
Thank you, Provost. The Black Watch has a celebrated history, and as has been said, initially formed in 1725, the regiment was created to maintain order in the Highlands following the Jacobite Rising of 1715. These companies were tasked with policing and peacekeeping duties. Despite their loyalty to the British Crown, the Black Watch faced suspicion and resentment from some Highlanders who viewed them as collaborators for siding with the government. However, their legacy has evolved significantly over time. The regiment demonstrated exceptional bravery and skill in numerous battles. And throughout the 18th and 19th century, the Black Watch fought in key conflicts such as the American War of Independence, the Napoleonic Wars, and the Crimean War. Their bravery continued into the 20th century with significant contributions during both world wars. By the end of the World War I, over 8,000 members of the regiment had lost their lives, epitomising their dedication and sacrifice. Today, the Black Watch is celebrated for its distinguished service and is recognised as one of the most storied regiments in the British Army. Their journey from being perceived as collaborators to being honoured as brave soldiers is testament to their enduring legacy and commitment to their country. During my time in the Army, I served alongside the Black Watch. It is an experience that leaves an indelible mark on anyone that's fortunate enough to have met these brave, distinguished soldiers. Renowned for their unwavering bravery, exceptional discipline, and deep camaraderie, the Black Watch exemplifies the highest standard of military excellence. Happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Councillor Braun, please.
Yes, thanks, Provost. I think it's very simple. It's very simply to thank the members of the Black Watch, past and present, for their service and their contribution to protecting the freedom of this country. We are, of course, as was mentioned, in a week when we are celebrating the dedication and sacrifice of many service personnel, and it's a time to bring this motion forward. And if I may simply add at the end, I know that our members of this chamber who have served in uniform, and may I add my thanks for their service as well. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Braun, and I would just add my own thanks to those of you in the room who are veterans and have served with distinction in the room, but also to those in our communities, which Perth Kinross has a much higher percentage than other parts of the United Kingdom who are veterans, and they play a very important role in our community. And I hope many of you will join us, if you are able to, tomorrow to mark VE Day, which is obviously very important. If I can invite Bailey Hearn to sum up if he wishes.
Yeah, very briefly, Provost, I'd like to thank everyone that's contributed to today. And yes, our veterans are important people in our community, and as one of the best jobs I've got in this council is as Armed Forces and Veterans Champion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bailey Hearn. Can we agree the motion? Thank you very much. Members, we move on to item 5, which is the outstanding business statement. Are there any questions on the outstanding business statement? I don't see any questions. Are we happy to note the outstanding business statement, members? Thank you. Members, item 6 is the Tay-Series Regional Deal Programme Midterm Review. We are going to have some short presentations at the start of this item, starting with Pitlochry Festival Theatre, which will be presented by Alison Seggy.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, councillors. If we can maybe get the presentation up on screen, please. Thank you. Just as an introduction, we have 3 short presentations, myself covering Pitlochry Festival Theatre on behalf of Chris Price, their Executive Director, who can't be with us today, unfortunately. That will be followed by a short presentation by James Hutton Institute online, and one of the PKC projects will be updated by Alan Dobson. In terms of the Pitlochry Festival Theatre project, work started on developing this project way back in 2013, and I have been involved all along. We helped fund a study with Creative Scotland and Scottish Enterprise, and work has been ongoing over the years to get this project to where it is today. The total cost of the project is actually something like 21.3 million, £10 million of that from the Tay-Cities deal. Additional money came from the Denard Fund, the Gannicky Trust, and numerous individual donors. So, looking at some of the slides on the screen, Pitlochry Festival Theatre is proud to share the completion of its ambitious project, which is a capital and creative project marking a significant milestone in the theatre's development and its role as a major cultural destination in the Highlands. This slide showcases a series of before and after visuals, comparing the original CGI concepts with the completed delivered spaces, each demonstrating tangible investments in enhancing the audience experience, environmental performance, and future-proofing the theatre's capacity as a producing house. This first image of the entrance highlights the revitalised theatre entrance, delivered as designed, offers a much more welcoming and accessible arrival experience for all visitors. The next slide, please, highlights the fully completed second performance space named The Studio, which seats 172 and provides a flexible, intimate venue for new work and expanded programming. It's a really great addition to the theatre. The next slide, please, shows us the newly expanded foyer, which enhances the theatre's ability to welcome audiences efficiently with improved flow, increased capacity and better hospitality infrastructure. The next slide please. Highlights the brand new toilet facilities, which increase the capacity, improve accessibility and bring the theatre in line with modern visitor expectations. And the next couple of slides, please, highlight the refurbished auditorium, which delivers a step change in audience comfort and technical capability. Key enhancements include new seating, an assisted lighting system, and upgraded stage infrastructure, which has been essential for maintaining Pitlochry's status as a leading producing theatre. And the final slide in this set shows the replacement of the thermal envelope, the outside of the building, which includes new glazing, a fully renewed roof, which significantly reduces operational carbon emissions, aligning the theatre with sustainability goals and reducing its long-term running costs. The next slide, please. Pitlochry Festival Theatre is pleased to report that the three core objectives of the project, increased usable space, job creation and visitor growth, have not only been met but substantially exceeded. The development of space unlocked. Through transformation of both the internal and external areas, the theatre has delivered nearly 5,800 square metres of developed space, a significant uplift on the original target of some 3,700 square metres. In terms of job creation, in year 5, the theatre's activity is now supporting 302 jobs, surpassing the already uplifted goal of 272. This figure reflects both direct employment and the wider economic ripple effect driven by the project. In terms of annual visitors, in the 24-25 financial year, the theatre welcomed 82,237 visitors. And notably, in the current advance ticket sales for this year, they're already 200% ahead at the same point of the previous season, a clear endorsement of the investment in the building, the refreshed offer and the theatre's strategic direction. And to sum up, with the capital transformation now complete and a new chapter in artistic leadership about to begin, Pitlochry Festival Theatre is confidently positioned to drive further cultural tourism and economic benefit for Perth and Kinross. The theatre looks forward to welcoming even more audiences, artists and partners in the years ahead. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Alison. If we can now invite Alistair Cox and Hugh Darby from James Hutton Institute to talk about the Advanced Plant Growth Centre and International Barley Hub, please.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Do you have the slides on screen there, or would you like me to share slides from my computer?
We have them, so we can put those up.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, I've been asked to come along and speak to you about the two projects, the International Barley Hub and Advanced Plant Growth Centre. These two combined projects were funded to the tune of £62 million through the Tasties deal. Could I have the next slide, please? So it was quite a convoluted journey that we went through, starting off with the master plan of our Invergowrie site in 2019. Due to the funding or the availability of the funding and the phasing of it, we had to deliver the project in a series of phases. And basically our construction, once funding was approved, construction began in April 21 and was concluded in July 24. And we had a number of challenges that we had to go through as we delivered against that. Could I have the next slide, please? So challenges that we had, some of them we were quite kind of expecting. Brexit came along, COVID was a big challenge for us. As we had literally just started the construction phase at that point. However, we did manage to keep everything ongoing. Construction inflation was also something that led to a big degree of value engineering. Unfortunately, with the Ukraine war, Brexit and others, construction inflation, although we had budgeted for that, ended up going at quite a pace, providing us with some challenges as to what we could deliver. Along with that was the planning compliance, and I have to say we did work very closely and very well with the planning team at the council, and would like to thank them for the help. Unfortunately, one of the challenges that we did have, the big challenge that we had, was archaeology, in that we found a small roundhouse village on the institute, which led to some delays creeping in around that, and also having to work around road junctions and such like as well. However, all of these things have been overcome and allowed us to continue with the development. Also to assist with the progression of the development, quite a bit of work around the VAT and other loans to help around the cash flow perspective, and also project management for a small institute as we are, that we had quite a lot of learnings through the process, but we did manage to deliver against that. Next slide, please. So what have we delivered? There were four key elements to this. So this is the picture of the campus. So starting to the left of the screen, the Bali Field Research Centre and the Integrated Field Facilities were the first two large buildings. In the middle of the campus, the rustic red colour is the IBH and APGC main building, and also the new access road that we have put in, so we didn't need to bring any construction traffic through Invergowrie, and that worked extremely well. Next slide, please. And the new centre, this is the Crop Innovation Centre. This was handed over to us in July 2024, and this was delivered 10 days ahead of schedule and on budget as well, which we are extremely pleased to have that it all worked. It is now operational. We have 142 people are now working in the site or within the building, and it is now the new centre of our Invergowrie campus. Next slide, please. And we're very fortunate to have John Swinney and the Secretary of State for Scotland, Ian Murray, came to open the building, and this took place on the 25th of October. And we firmly believe that this does cement the reputation of Scotland and the UK as global leaders in research and innovation around plant and environmental sciences, which is what we are delivering out of this building. Next slide, please. So on the delivery side, now that we have finished all the construction work, these are the objectives that we are going to be delivering through the development. And with the job numbers, we're almost at 13% of the delivery of those, and we are well on the way to delivering against each of the other targets that we have within our business cases. Next slide, please. And we have, just to point out, despite having the 62 million, we still do have a small funding gap to deliver other aspects. So we are still looking for funding for this, and we are continuing to develop the site and make improvements. Next slide, please. And our aspirations have not stopped there. We have now already submitted the outline business case for the Centre for Agriculture and Sustainable Innovation, which is located at Balodry, which is part of the Angus funded element of the Tay City Region deal. And we're looking for our next big project, which is the National Potato Innovation Centre, which is a 42 million ask to enhance the work that we do around potatoes. Next slide, and I think that is my last slide, and it is just to say thank you very much, and also to thank the council and particularly around the planning team for the support and assistance that they have provided to all of this. It has been very much a team effort, and very much welcome the support from the council. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I think we're doing the final presentation, and then there will be an opportunity for questions after that. If you can just stay on the call briefly.
Yep.
Final presentation is from Alan Dobson to talk about rural high-speed broadband.
Morning. Hopefully you can hear me fine. Yes, Alan Dobson. I'm presenting on behalf of Graham Pinfield from Perth Kinross and Alistair MacLeod for the rural broadband project. Is that? Can you hear me now? I'll start again. Apologies. Yeah, Alan Dobson. I'm presenting on behalf of Graham Pinfield and Alistair MacLeod for the rural broadband project. Next slide, please. So just going back to the original heads of terms, it was actually 2018 when things started to come together for this project, and it's worth noting that superfast broadband access in Perth and Kinross was around about 49%, which is really quite different from now. So that was sort of November 2018. Next slide, please. The project itself was part of Local Full Fibre Networks Wave 3 project, and it was actually funded partly by Tay-City's deal for 2 million and leveraged in around about 4 million from DCMS, and that installed from the rural Angus side 26 premises, but from Perth and Kinross and Angus it was 186 premises, including a dark fibre network at Perth City Centre, and then fibre out to the buildings further out. Rapier Systems provided the rural network in Angus. The key impacts for this project were to connect gigabit capability of broadband to schools, community facilities and public buildings, and it was a good collaboration between Angus, Perth and Kinross Council, Tay-Cities and the UK government, and the contract was all delivered through good successful project management work with suppliers, and what the plan is also to be that stepping stone to encourage further connections. Next slide, please. There's a few site examples here in the slide. One example would be Bertha Park School. This was an opportunity to put a dark fibre network in, and the difference between a dark fibre network and a normal fibre network means you can actually upgrade the endpoints yourself. So it means it's providing our schools with almost a limitless capacity going forward. So the capacity there just now is 20 gigs, which is around about 60 times the capacity the school's using just now. So it's just giving you that kind of future proofing from the dark fibre network. And at the other sites that have been connected, the capacity increased by about 5 times. And it's safe to say that without this project, both the schools and our public buildings would be struggling to facilitate the connectivity that we use today. Next slide, please. Part of the project was to build the fibre, which takes about 90% of the cost, is actually the construction. The project ended in November 2021, so it's a successfully completed project. And the projects from the NEOS network, for example, were all delivered pretty much the 12 months during the pandemic starting in 2021. So you can imagine that there was some restrictions around the project, but this was all built, so the 34 dark fibre sites built by NEOS Networks, and then the 186 sites were completed. Next slide, please. As discussed, the Angus part of the project, or the rural Angus project, was to connect 26 sites with 1 gigabit wireless connectivity, and wireless connectivity will probably be used going forward to connect more rural sites as it becomes very difficult to do full fibre and fibre out there, and there'll probably be other technologies like low-level satellite that might also pick up. But this was a successful project to deliver that core infrastructure that allows us to beam the high-speed wireless out to the sites. Next slide, please. So I want to just kind of highlight what's next, just so that we know that there is still progress to be made. Going back to the statistics at the start, in 2018, it was around about 49% of premises had superfast. This is currently 87% in Perth and Kinross. Ultrafast has moved from 33% to 46%, and full fibre back in 2018 was 0.7%. We are now up at 20% fibre, and we're still continuing to build. And the next sort of big interventions will be the R100 project that should finish by around about sort of 2028, and also there is the project Gigabit, which is getting delivered just now. And as you can see, we're split into the two different lots, Lot 5 and Lot 4, and the rest of Scotland. So we're actually split across 3 different procurements for this. Lot 4 is expected to be announced realistically by the end of 2025. And Lot 5, which was originally expected to be announced, is going to be happening possibly by the summer with a new OMR. And BT was announced that they won Lot 7, which influences what can be delivered in PH 8, 10, 15 and 16 for Perth. So there's still a lot to build, and that continued engagement between local authorities, infrastructure providers, businesses and consumers remains crucial to ensure that broadband can be pushed out to the rest of the places that haven't quite got it yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can now invite Alison Seggy, the Economic Development Manager for People Partnerships and Funding, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Provost. This report provides an update on progress with the Tay Cities Region deal. The deal was approved in December 2020 and is a partnership between both the UK and Scottish governments and local partners, including ourselves, Angus Council, Dundee City Council and Fife Council. It has now moved into its 5th year of implementation. The report and the annual review for 2024 that it refers to summarises the significant progress that has been made at this halfway point. To date, £152 million has already been invested by the deal in projects, creating or protecting over 2,400 jobs and securing further levered investment of some £180 million. A total of 9 projects, including 6 in Perth and Kinross, have been delivered. 2 projects at the James Hutton Institute, the Advanced Plant Growth Centre and the Barley Hub, the new Perth Museum, improvements to Pitlochry Festival Theatre, a joint project with Angus Council to deliver high-speed broadband, an active travel and low-carbon hub at Broxden, with a further 9 in delivery across the region. The remaining 20 projects are still at various stages of development and business case approval. Council officers remain in active contact with all the Perth and Kinross projects to support their further development and to help them to finalise the completion of their business cases. Several challenges in the delivery of the deal and its projects have arisen over the first 5 years funding period, including the impact of the COVID pandemic and inflationary pressures on some projects, and these have led to delays in progressing business cases. An approach to reshaping the programme to ensure we remain on track to deliver the rest of the planned investment has been agreed by the Joint Committee recently, and this is outlined in the report. I'm happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you very much. I first of all have a question from Councillor Forbes on GHI and a question on rural broadband. Councillor Forbes, your questions, please.
Thanks, Provost. Just a comment really on the GHI, and I just want to thank Colin for that presentation. As one of the local members, I'm very conscious that GHI are a really good neighbour to the people of Invergowrie, and the decision to build that access road in from the north has made a huge difference to the traffic flow through Invergowrie, so I'm grateful to them for that. On to my question on rural broadband. I was quite surprised that there was a lot of talk about Perth city centre in what we were told was rural broadband, and particularly some of the schools. I just wondered why we're doing so much in the Perth city centre when it's a rural broadband scheme. And I just wonder if I could also ask about the R100 scheme, which I think was promised to be delivered in 2021, and now we're suggesting potentially 2028. And if there's any more information we can get on a definite completion date for that project. Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. Out of the 186 sites that were delivered, 34 of them were delivered within Perth through the NEOS network. And I think the reason for this was because of the leverage funding in from local full fibre network programme. It was to provide an opportunity for anchor ducts to be created so that further buildings and businesses could be threaded off of that. So that was one of the main reasons it was an opportunity to do that. And with having the ability to put a dark fibre network in, it gives us the ability to connect the likes of Bertha Park with virtually unlimited capacity for going forward. So it was a very good way to leverage that finance in. Regarding the R100 programme, it's it's been well noted that has been delayed quite significantly, with 2028 being the date for some of the final build. We've been working with them for a number of years, and even after that project, there will be sites that need to get picked up. And as I mentioned, there's other procurements going on through Project Gigabit, and even above and beyond those procurements, there will still be some harder to reach project premises that will need to connect. So I think a lot of it's to do with difficulties, engineering difficulties, and also cost of getting out to rural regions. That's what's caused the delays primarily.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson, you have 2 questions. So, Councillor Robertson, can you switch your mic off and on again, please?
Can I ask first of all about page 80, the plans for the Perth bus and rail interchange? I noticed £15 million has been allocated towards that, and it's currently we're trying to work up a business case for that. Can you give me some sort of time scale as to when this might come to fruition? Because I would see that as a huge step forward for the public transport possibilities for Perth and surrounding areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson, for your question. As the report highlights, there's a time scale effectively for the review of project in development, business case in development. So for the bus and railway station interchange, that will follow the same process. So we have to complete the business or provide the assurance that we will progress the project by the Strand 1A, which is the September. So we have that time to effectively confirm that, and we are effectively working towards that time scale effectively of developing the business case and reassurance for that. It has to be aware that it is linked to the work we are doing in relation to Perth Transport Futures Phase 4, which is obviously following the opening of the Destiny Bridge and the development of the Bertha Link Road. So that's the next step in that process, and as part of that, we are working using the mobility strategy, which has been already approved. We are working towards a new circulation plan for Perth City, and within that there will be obviously public transport, and that's why there will be a link with the bus and railway interchange there. We have also to work with the timescale of Network Rail in terms of the redevelopment of the station, which is a very long-term period that they have to work towards. But what the business case will focus on is what we can do within the timescale of the TCT's deal, so the next 5 to 6 years, and how we can link with additional measure in terms of active travel, linking the railway station to the city centre, and how we are effectively facilitating regional and local buses in circulation in the city centre.
Thank you for that reply, which is really helpful. It's just that we seem to have been talking about a transport interchange in Perth for at least quarter of a century, and so I'm slightly nervous about this money disappearing and never been used. May I ask my final question? Thank you. I think my fellow ward councillors in Kinrossshire are really excited about the proposals and the funding that's come forward to support aerospace Kinross. And my understanding is that we're struggling, or they're struggling, to find a suitable site. And I know that they've been in in correspondence with the Chief Executive on this, and I think perhaps you as well, Mr. Maroon. Can you give us any indication where we are with this? And also, because I, for one, would be, it's a tremendous facility. I've seen what they're currently doing, and it's amazing the number of children that they actually bring in and actually let them know about what potential is for space and for aerospace in particular, which is a huge industry in Scotland. So can you give me a wee bit, hopefully some good news on where we are with that? Thank you.
Yes, regarding the aerospace Kinross project, which is one of the projects in development, it has developed the business case, but as you mentioned, obviously the site, the location has been an issue for that project. So we've been in contact with them, and we'll be working with them to effectively see how we can help them within the timescale which is highlighted in the report. But we are obviously aware that the time is marching on, and there are some pressing deadlines for the project. So, but we will be working with them to find a possible solution for them.
If I make it back, are you optimistic that you'll be able to bring that exciting project about?
I think it's up to the project promoter, obviously, to lead the project. So we are here to support the project promoter. I know they have done a lot of effort, and they've been committing a lot of time, to develop the project. So we do our best to support them, as much as we can, in the next few weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question from Bailey Ahern, and can I just remind all members to make sure the mic is in front of you when you're speaking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is regarding the Aviation Academy, which is in the table marked as currently in development. Given the recent news we've had with AST that's based at Perth UHI, is that connected to this academy, and has it had an impact, and is the project still on track?
Thank you for your question, Billy Aaron. Yes, we are acutely aware of the situation with the air service training, and we've been reaching out to the college and the administrator to see if we can help or support to help the situation. It is linked to the Aviation Academy for Scotland, which is one of the projects listed in the report, in such a way that the college is obviously a lead partner in that project, in the city's deal, and obviously the college will have to look at how they can effectively take forward the project, and at the same time dealing with the issue of the air service training. We are obviously trying to help the Aviation Academy of Scotland to take forward. The college has already started to develop the business case for that project, and they identified potential solutions for some of the challenges they faced in the first in the development of the projects. So they are linked, but I think we need to wait for for what's happening with the air service training to see what could be the impact on the project. But in parallel, the project is still being developed, and we see how we can, as a council, help the college to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Barrett next.
Thank you, Provost. I'm looking at section 4.3 about the review, and I see the timetable in Appendix 2. And I must say I share Councillor Robertson's interest in and desire for progress on the Perth bus and rail interchange, but I appreciate the process for review has been agreed. What are the arrangements for reporting back to us on the review, and what's decided, please?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Barrett. Yes, so in the report, we are obviously saying that we will come back to the council, when the assessment and the review has been done, and we are targeting the council in September to do that review.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rebeck.
Thank you, Provost. Just a question on rural broadband, actually, because I quite enjoyed that presentation. Thank you. The way I read it that we've gone from super fast broadband's gone from 49% in 2018 to 87% now, which feels pretty impressive, actually. I'm wondering, because I know the aspirations of R100 to finish at 2028 is 100%, and notwithstanding what you're saying about some of rural Perthshire and indeed some of Kinrossshire being really difficult to reach, I'm just wondering what you think a realistic aspiration is for the end of 2028 in terms of how many of our households will have super fast rural broadband. It'll be up into the 90s, I'm assuming, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think this super fast broadband should hit over 90%. I think what you'll find though is now the push is towards fibre. So any of the houses will be getting connected up that won't be copper to the fibre cabinet. It'll be straight into fibre. So what will happen is the further procurement from the UK government will pick up other white buildings, with basically buildings that have got no service. And it'll be really interesting to see what comes out at the end of lot 4 and lot 5, basically, as I said, so probably towards the end of this year, to see what the gaps will be and what can actually be delivered, and that'll be get a real sort of sense of what the hard to find will be by sort of 2030. We'll have an understanding of those outside that and whether they'll push a voucher project to connect those via wireless, it was discussed earlier, or whether the technologies like satellite and low level orbit are high enough to do that. So it's a good picture coming forward, and I think that from rural places over the next sort of 5 to 10 years there'll be a significant increase in connectivity.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions, members, and therefore I'm going to ask the Leader of the Council to move the report, please.
Thanks, Provost. This report provides an update on progress with the Tay-Cities region deal. The deal was approved in December 2020 and has now moved into its 5th year of implementation. The deal and the projects and programmes within the deal represent the most significant investment in the economic development of our area in recent times. And good progress has been made in key projects which will deliver significant economic benefits have already been delivered within Perth and Kinross and the wider Tay-Cities region. These include the £62 million investment, as we've heard, in the Barley Hub and Advanced Plant Growth Centre at the James Hutton Institute, and the £10 million for the Perth Museum, and up to £10 million to support the redevelopment and refurbishment of Pitlochry Theatre. As an adjunct, the Tay-Cities deal was the £40 million to help towards Destiny Bridge and the new Kingsway that came from the Scottish Government. Across the wider region, significant projects which have been drawn down 100% of funding include the impressive Eden campus at Garbridge, led by St Andrews University, and the University of Dundee's biomedical project. And similar to, as Councillor Bailey Ahern said, that being the Armed Forces champion gives him great pleasure within the council, but the ability for me to visit all of these sites and see how they're progressing is one of the things that I enjoy most about being in this position. The most recent annual report outlines that over 50% of the £300 million allocated has been claimed, and with further £180 million of leverage secured. However, a significant number of the projects remain to be fully developed and gain business case approval. There have been many challenges to the delivery of the deal and its projects, and many of these have arisen over the first 5-year funding period, including the impact of the COVID pandemic and inflationary pressures on projects. These have led to delays in progressing business cases. So there has to be a change in approach, and so that change in approach means reshaping the programme, and this has been agreed by the Joint Committee recently. And officers will have to confirm whether projects are still deliverable in their original format, require some changes, or may have to be decommitted, and potentially new projects proposed and agreed. This will take place over a 12-month period, with a new programme to be finalised by the summer of next year, and this will have to be agreed with partners and both governments. I'm very pleased to move this paper for your approval. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader to second.
Thank you, Provost. And I think across the chamber we've seen today by the very interesting and informative presentations that the officers have provided, and those from James Hutton Institute as well have provided. They just give a flavour for the huge scale of this initiative and of the hard work of the teams involved. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the economy, development and planning teams for their not inconsiderable efforts in putting and keeping Perth and Kinross front and centre of this intergovernmental collaborative effort to support business growth, develop new technologies and create jobs. From the James Hutton Institute in Castlegowrie through the fantastic Perth Museum to Destiny Bridge and the new Kingsway, Pitlochry Festival Theatre, the low carbon travel hub at Broxden and multiple other projects currently in development across the whole of our local authority area, it is clear that this investment is already yielding considerable economic growth potential across our communities. That these achievements are being delivered despite very challenging economic circumstances makes these successes to date all the more praiseworthy. These economic forces, not least COVID and construction inflation, have potentially impacted affordability of certain projects, and so at this stage it is very important that we carefully assess the deliverability of remaining projects and programmes, and if and where deemed prudent, look to propose alternative projects to deliver the same commitments if any existing project is deemed no longer viable. This exercise is essential if Perth and Kinross, and indeed the wider Tay Cities region, is to benefit to the greatest extent possible from this £300 million of combined government investment. And I'm very happy, therefore, to second this paper's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. First comment, Councillor Willie Robertson.
Thank you, Provost. There's a word that's used often, and you hear it being used often, and that's transformative. And it's often overused, but the contents of this report does show that it can have this funding can have a transformative effect, as we've seen for the projects from the James Hutton Institute and the Cross Tay Link Road and Perth Museum. All those projects are going to make a huge difference to Perth and Kinross and for the jobs and chances of people here. I think it's very important that we as a council actually work hard to make sure that the projects that haven't come forward, I mentioned a couple, actually do so, because it'd be dreadful if the money that's been allocated to help bring these projects about doesn't get used and is wasted. So, and I'm pleased to hear from the James Hutton Institute that they're praising our council planners for the efforts they made to try and our economic team to bring their project to fruition, which is excellent. But let's make sure we don't lose sight of the goals that are ahead and use this fantastic opportunity to really make a transformative effect on Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Duff next, please.
Thank you, Provost, and I'd like to thank officers for their report and contributions today, and the speakers on the various projects today. Good progress has been made with the myriad of projects which the deal contains, with obviously 232 million out of the 300 approved for investment so far, and that has leveraged in additional funding of £180 million and created nearly 2,500 jobs. So I think that's a a tremendous achievement so far, and it shows the scale of change which city deals can bring about. And we thank both the UK and the Scottish governments for this commitment to our region. We're now halfway into the 10-year deal period, and in many ways, some of the harder work, I think, is still to come, bringing home as many of the remaining projects as possible. And if these are no longer going to be feasible in terms of the attracting the other investment that's needed to complete these projects, we certainly need to ensure that all of the funds allocated to projects in Perth and Kinross are used wisely in this region to bring home as many of the projects as we possibly can. And I look forward to hearing about the consultations that will be ongoing in the next stage in terms of the review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. There being no further comments, Councillor Leader, do you wish to sum up?
No, it was maybe slightly remiss of me, but I would like to thank the officers for all the work they've been doing and will be doing moving forward. We just as everybody I'm sure is aware, many of these projects have got different other sponsors, and we are only there to really to support people who have been successful in getting through the first round to have funding allocated, and we'll support them to try and bring them to fruition. But it is not just down to our council officers to make sure these projects come forward. So thanks for your work so far and what will happen over the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leader. If I can just express my thanks to our partners from the James Hutton Institute for joining us this morning and presenting, and also to the other partners and the officers who are, as the Council Leader and others have said, working hard to deliver these projects for the region. Can we agree the report? Thank you. Members, item 7 is the Annual Treasury Report 2024-25, and Scott Walker, the Strategic Lead for Finance and Business Support, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, councillors. In accordance with the SITFA Code of Practice, this report provides elected members with a summary of Treasury management activity for financial year 24-25. Specifically, this is a look back at last year with a comparison of the Treasury strategy that you approved at Council on the 6th of March 2024. The Finance and Resources Committee received 6 monthly updates in November 24 and April 25 for quarters 2 and 4 respectively, and those were subject to detailed scrutiny. In addition, elected member briefings were issued for quarters 1 and 3. Section 3 provides a summary of our Treasury position as at 31st of March 2025. Over the year as a whole, the Council's long-term borrowing increased to £715.2 million, at an average interest rate of 2.92%, a slight increase on last year. During 24-25, we borrowed £100 million in 6 tranches, commencing in August 24, and the detail is set out in the table at paragraph 6.3. Consistent with our strategy, this borrowing was done for varying terms or up to 4 years, in the expectation that interest rates will fall further over the medium term. Also, in line with the approved Treasury strategy, our investment balances continued to reduce. At 31st of March, these amounted to £24.1 million at an average interest rate of 5.5%. As expected, interest rates reduced gradually from the start of the financial year. However, on an accruals basis, we still generated over £2.5 million in interest during 24-25. I'm pleased to confirm that once again there were no breaches in compliance with the approved investment strategy, that all aspects of the Prudential Code, including prudential indicators and limits, were fully adhered to throughout the year, and that the Council's indicators show the Council's plans remain prudent, affordable and sustainable. Provost John Jennings is online and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and you might want to stay there. Councillor Donaldson has a question.
Thank you, Provost. I have just one question. It's on interest rates, and that'll be of particular interest, in particular to local residents who on mortgages, but also to others. We're likely to see a fall in interest rates tomorrow to 4.25%. But what I do want to ask both Scott Walker and John Jennings, is if we turn to page 87, the table there, the 100 million that's been borrowed from Treasury, the UK Treasury mainly, and about 20 million from local authorities over the last year is 1 to 4 years. Just can I ask the direction of travel that is being anticipated on interest rates, or what is they see as possibly the trigger point for rescheduling those borrowings into 30 and perhaps 50-year money? Thank you.
So thank you. Perhaps I'll start and John can join in after. So we, as you're right, we are expecting interest rate tomorrow. I think that's fairly clear in terms of the media speculation. We're also expecting further cuts throughout the year, through to Christmas, perhaps even as many as 3. That's based on the forecast information that we're getting. We're obviously keeping the situation under review. We're expecting to borrow another £20 million between now and July in terms of our cash flow requirements. And there'll be further borrowing on that, but we are keeping that on a daily review in terms of the best time to borrow. You'll be aware that the market rates are particularly volatile around about just now in terms of some of the global conditions, but we are working with our advisors so that we try and get the best time to borrow. John, is there anything you would want to add?
Yeah, I'll just make the point that because the borrowing we have done is sort of 1 to 4 years, these will naturally mature in that period and be replaced at prevailing rates. But I think the longer term borrowing, 30 to 50 years, is maybe 2 or 3 years away before we're in that environment. They expect the shorter term borrowing to remain cheaper in that time scale.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker, there are no further questions, so you can take your seat. I'd like to invite Councillor Donaldson to move the report, and I'll just remind you, Councillor Donaldson, you and the Leader of the Council have 10 minutes combined.
Thanks. Provost, fellow councillors, I will be brief, well, at least fairly brief. What we've got before us today, this report, is in accordance with approved Treasury management practices. It covers the Council's Treasury position and also provides wider commentary on activity during 24-25 and the year to end March 20 this year. As Scott Walker has mentioned, over the last year, the Finance and Resources Committee has been kept up to date and Council as wider on a wider basis with elected member briefings and with updates to Finance and Resources on a twice yearly basis. These updates, provide elected members with the opportunity to scrutinise and also comment on Treasury management activity. And as been referred to, we did just that last week. Indeed, I can't recall a time when we've actually had 2 Treasury papers within the space of 1 week. But there we are. I think the report is comprehensive. I want to say, first of all, there were no breaches of compliance with the Council's approved borrowing and investment policies and strategy over the year. And indeed, I can't recall any breaches, certainly over recent years. All aspects of the Prudential Code, including prudential indicators and limits, were fully adhered to throughout the year. But it's not just on sound and solid governance that this report relates to. I think we've seen our proactive approach to treasury management, and that has delivered significant investment returns to the council. Our consolidated loans fund rate, and it is increasing, still benefits from the borrowing we undertook at very low rates a few years back, and that really did help us. We're also still generating good rates of return on our investments. Our proactive treasury activity has generated over 2.5 million, which will support the wider work of this council. Finally, I just want to thank our treasury management officers for the work that they put in, often not noticed by all councillors, but it makes such a big impact to the workings of this council as to what we can do and what we can be enabled to do. Finally, I'm happy to move the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. At 3 minutes and 20 seconds, I'm going to enter that to the Guinness World Records as your shortest speech yet. So it's greatly appreciated. Mr. Leader, to second.
Thanks, Provost. I don't often like to be boring, and we always want the council to move forward and be transformational. I may fail, Councillor Barrett, I may fail with not wanting to be boring, but this is the one part of the council that I like to be same old year on year, and just be nothing transformational needed for them, Charlene. The job that they do is behind the scenes, doesn't get enough praise. We do have a bit of a joke with Councillor Donaldson and that, but it's the most important part of the whole council. If our finances aren't getting worked to the best of their ability and sweated to the ability, to the amount that they are done there, there's other things that we would not be able to do that we really want to do for our residents. So just want to thank the whole team led by Mr. Walker and for working behind the scenes and making our job easier by being sound financial management. Thank you. Happy to move seconded paper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Councillor Peter Barrett with a comment.
Thanks, Provost, and all joking aside on Stuart's obsession with all things to do with treasury management, I think it is really important that we have, individual elected members who will provide a laser-like focus on all aspects of the council's business, or particular aspects of the council's business. And I think it is reassuring from an elected member perspective to see that we have maintained our record of compliance in full with our treasury management policies. I think it's important to reflect on the comments that John Jennings made, and paraphrasing what he said, I think is clear that the golden days of cheap long-term borrowing are behind us and aren't going to return, at least in the short term, perhaps in the medium term. But there's certainly a lot of uncertainty about that, and while we have ambitions to have an ambitious and sizable capital investment programme, our treasury management borrowing is what determines how affordable the sorts of facilities that we want to provide in Perth and Kinross for all sorts of groups of interest and the people that live in our area. They determine whether we can actually deliver those in practice. So it is vital that we have professional and dedicated treasury management and sound financial management as well. So I'd just like to thank the team that are involved in that, and also thank Stuart for his diligent attention to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I think we would all echo those comments, and particularly we are all reassured that Councillor Donaldson is keeping watch of the finances along with Mr. Walker. On that note, I'd like to, Councillor Liz Barrett would like to comment as well.
Sorry, I withdraw my comment because he did end up saying what I was going to say about treasury management and about Councillor Donaldson, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Donaldson, would you like to sum up?
Thank you very much, Provost. I think it's all been said. I think what we do have on this council, there's obviously risks, lots of risk, and those risks have almost certainly intensified over the last year, in particular on tariffs and the impact that might have on the global economy, the possibility of recession, the uncertainties that I think do exist in interest rates. But I think we do evidence here with the council that certainly, and I think relative to, not being complacent, but relative to other local authorities, we are in quite a good position. Once again, though, I do want to echo my thanks to Scott Walker, to the finance team, but in particular in this instance to Treasury Management officers. I think they do a great job, and it's often so much, not noticed, and it does matter so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson, and I would ask Mr Walker just to reflect that back to those members of the team, because it is greatly appreciated by us all. Members, we're now going to take a 10-minute break, so if I can ask you to be back at 25 minutes to 12, please. Welcome back, members. We now move on to item 8, which is the Transformation and Change Programme update, and I'd like to invite Charlene Guild, the Strategic Lead for Projects and Programmes, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, councillors. I'm pleased to provide an update on the progress of our Transformation and Change Programme Phase 2, covering the timeline from September 2024 to April 2025. The Transformation and Change Programme, which underpins our 5-year strategy to June 2027, is vital in supporting our overarching vision to create a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live life well, free from poverty and inequality. The wide range of project outcomes and milestones reflect this ambition. Following our last update to Finance and Resources Committee in September 2024, we have made good progress moving into Phase 2 of the programme. Appendix 1 provides detailed updates on each individual project, highlighting key achievements, milestones, and any challenges faced during the reporting period. Projects are already realising early benefits, which are highlighted within the report. These benefits demonstrate the positive impact of the programme on our organisation and the communities we serve. And while final timescales are visible for each individual project, it must be noted that key milestones are being met regularly, with progress on an incremental basis as we progress through the programme. In Phase 2, the Programme Management Office have been instrumental in focusing, coordinating and providing regular monitoring across all areas of the programme. This has led to improved consistency, clear support structures and more accountability in terms of monitoring and reporting. Regular reporting to the Transformation Board is ongoing, with additional in-depth project workshops held monthly. We have also undertaken a variety of engagement activities with service design events, workshops, focus groups, online questionnaires, surveys, virtual meetings and desktop research. In addition, we have introduced a series of regular briefings on the Transformation and Change Programme for elected members. These briefings have covered specific areas of the programme such as whole family wellbeing, additional support needs and smarter working, as well as an overview of the full programme. In conclusion, the Transformation and Change Programme has made significant progress over the last 6 months. We will continue to engage with our elected members and stakeholders to ensure the successful implementation of the programme and to address any challenges that arise. I look forward to answering any questions that I have been joined online by colleagues leading in specific areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. First question from Councillor Willie Robertson.
Thank you, Provost. Could I turn to page 121? And thank you for your presentation, which has been helpful. Page 121 and the fairer communities for all model. I have a problem in as much as I get continual problems from areas of social housing, where the council, as a housing provider, refuses or seems unable to get the tenant to adhere to the housing tenancy agreement they signed. Now, when that happens, they can create merry hell. They can ruin the lives of people round about. They can, and this can happen over years. And in one, I can show you emails I've got from a current two problems. One of which has gone on for years, and yet
getting to the question.
I know, I'm just coming. One is gone on for years, and it's still not in any way resolved. What can we do as a council to make sure that our tenants adhere to their tenancy agreements, and that would actually help to make communities fairer for all people? Thank you.
Okay, Elaine Ritchie, Strategic Lead for Housing and Communities.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and I'm aware of the complex case that you're discussing, and to give you assurance, the team are working really hard, but there's legislation that we need to follow and they are following that, but we can discuss that case again offline. In terms of the Fairer Communities for All model, yeah, that will be to work with really complex and challenging cases, because sometimes it's just not a housing issue, it could be a multitude of issues, and it involves a multidisciplinary approach to be taken, and that's the point of this model, is to work in communities where there are complex cases, working together collectively with all the key services to tackle and address those issues. But I do understand and appreciate your frustration with some of those cases. They're in the minority. We've got over 8,000 council properties, and we do have one or two really challenging and complex cases, which I'm fully aware of, and I understand your concerns.
Ms Ritchie, I have to say that you in particular have been very helpful in trying to resolve the issues that I'm highlighting here, and I'm grateful to you and also to your deputy and staff for trying to do that. But when you're saying it's legislation and different things that make it very, very difficult for you to just do the simple thing, like make a tenant adhere to their tenancy agreement. An agreement's an agreement that we sign. That's what I just, and my constituents just don't understand. So let's have fairer communities, but we have to give you the power to enforce them. Thank you.
Okay, maybe that can continue to be picked up offline. Councillor Allen next, please.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Charlene, for the report. First one is just a very quick question. On page 98, we talk about our highlights, and at 4.1, although you go through the wording there, it says these improvements are not being reported as part of the transformation and change programme. I just wonder why we don't actually include them and celebrate all that we're achieving and benefiting from.
So there are a number of different programmes going on in the organisation. There's also business improvement that happens day to day. And I think the reason that the Cross-Tay Link Road, as an example there, wasn't actually included is just that it predated the transformation and change programme that we have at the moment. But absolutely most of our big projects are all included within Appendix 1 in the summary today.
My second question is on page 113, where we're talking about progress on the ALIO transformation. As it's suggested that we're working towards an early summer, and this is now May, schedule for completion of that work, I just wonder if you can give us an update on progress. Thank you.
So at this point in time, we have a consultant carrying out a full options appraisal exercise that's due to finalise at the end of June, start of July, and we will be bringing options and recommendations to full council in September. I think it's the 10th of September.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braun next, please. Struggling to hear you, Councillor Braun.
Microphone slipped. I beg your pardon. Most of the projects we have in front of us talk about digital technology. and obviously artificial intelligence is one of those. As we're evolving more and more into a digital age, can I ask, are our protections of our systems being evolved as well? I think it's a relevant point because I understand in the news yesterday that West Lothian Council were witnessing an attempted hack. So the question is, are we actually protecting our systems as we evolve?
Thank you. Alan Taylor to answer.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Braun. Yes, we do everything we can. Our IT staff operate to a security first principle, and we are obviously incredibly proactive in terms of what happened with regards to the retail sector recently. We circulated the advisory note round all of our IT staff, for example, although obviously so far in regards to that, it seems to be targeted at particular retailers. We were aware of what happened in West Lothian. I saw one of my colleagues going into Carpenter House at 7 AM this morning just to ensure that there was no issues with ourselves in Perth and Kinross, and we have 24/7 monitoring. We were one of the first councils to do that with a security operations centre. And our IT management team meet regularly with our security IT staff.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa Simpson.
Yes, and just to give some assurance, obviously, the information governance and data protection and information security team that work under mine work very closely with Alan, and we are involved across all of the digitally related projects, particularly the AI, and AI governance is an integral part of that project's success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Liz Barrett with your 2 questions.
Thank you, Provost. My first question is a general question. I welcome the report, and there is a lot of good news in it. You referred in your opening remarks to challenges, but we don't actually have visibility of. I looked for challenge, and after you were speaking, I looked for challenge in the report, and it doesn't actually tell us where the key challenges are. Could you tell us about that, please?
Of course. Thank you, Councillor Barrett. So we have highlighted some risks in 5.11 within the covering paper, and they are mainly around things like resources, capacity for taking on larger projects and programmes. Some of our senior responsible owners of transformation and change programmes are also carrying out strategic lead posts as their day job. So the challenges tend to be around timescales, pace, capacity and resources, and I think we've started highlighting some of these and how we are trying to mitigate them as we go along.
Could in future reports, could we have a bit more detail on that, please? Thank you.
And you had a second question.
Sorry, I thought you were going to call me back afterwards. Thank you. My second question is relating to it actually hits several areas. It's commissioning and procurement, Tayside contracts and zero waste. On commissioning and procurement, I see the target over the 3 years is 1.5 million, of which we've delivered 400,000. We've got 350,000 in 25-26. So that leaves 750,000, or half the target, to be delivered in year 3. So I just wondered whether that was still looking achievable on there. And commissioning and procurement is tied up with Tayside contracts and zero waste, in that I think it's not clear how much control we actually have over Tayside contracts procurement, and what steps they're taking for reduction in single-use items, which will be a key part of the circular economy strategy that's coming to us later this year. Thank you.
In terms of the savings target, I think that's proving particularly challenging, particularly given the inflationary costs. So without radically reducing what we buy, it's unlikely that some of these savings will be made. And it's about how we do that smarter and how we collaborate to get better value for the money and avoid perhaps increased costs going forward. In terms of the work with Tayside contracts and that we do look for opportunities whereby we can collaboratively procure items, and there is a standalone project itself looking at Tayside contracts, which Claire can perhaps speak to in greater detail. But there is without a doubt the savings target is a real challenge.
Yeah, in terms of Tayside contracts, I think, yeah, we're exploring all opportunities in terms of, procurement, joint working, as Lisa's described. We're currently undertaking an external review, fact-finding exercise in terms of Tayside contracts round and about budget, financials, governance arrangements, performance and productivity. So that work is due to commence over the next few weeks, and we've certainly been working with members of the board on that, and we've actually got a workshop with Tayside contracts, joint members of the joint board from Perth and Kinross Council. I think it's in the diary for in a couple of weeks' time. So a number of areas that we are exploring. Some of us visited the Central Production Unit a couple of weeks ago, and these were the kinds of discussions that we're having on the points that you raised there, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, and just some reassurance on what pressure we can apply to them in terms of zero waste and our climate change action plan. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett, obviously we agreed the new procurement strategy last year, and one of the elements of that was about environmental sustainability being an integral focus of the strategy going forward. What we're looking to do is build in as many environmental protections into our specifications so that we can link quite clearly and try and demonstrate where our procurement activity is making a difference in terms of our carbon ambitions. And we do work very closely, obviously, with the environmental team and with Fraser and his wider group and the representative. We look at this collectively across the council so that we can see where there are opportunities whereby the procurement function can deliver greater environmental value and help us achieve our priorities and our ambitions.
Thank you, Councillor Mayo.
Thank you. Charlene, thank you. I did enjoy that report, and it's very interesting and informative. My question relates to page 100, 5.5, engagement and consultation. And I just wanted to ask, how do you actually, or how does the project...
Sorry, Councillor Mayor, can you move your microphone a bit closer to you? Just
so sorry.
Here in
Is that better? Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, how does the project identify the participants who are then asked to take part in the workshops and the focus groups? And also, what other methodology do we use to ensure that those people who are not online or able to participate digitally have also got the ability to have their say? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Mayor. We've just finalised a phase 2 communication and engagement plan, which was approved at our transformation board. So each individual project will have their own communication and engagement plan as well, and based around their professional subject matter, they will identify their own stakeholders within that. So one of the things that we have been doing lately as part of our programme management office approach is identifying interdependencies between projects. So we're starting to look at overlaps and links and where we need to consider that internally. Externally, I know that there are a number of groups, community groups, that people are tapped into, and depending upon the subject area, we depend upon the list of community groups, contacts, representatives, businesses, partners, but we do have a sort of full-scale mapping as part of service design where we look at every part of the project in a service design workshop and look at where we would need to tap into engaging with communities, with businesses, with partners. So we actually look at that as a separate exercise in itself to make sure that we are involving people who need to be involved and not excluding people who perhaps aren't online or perhaps would prefer to speak to us face-to-face in events.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Provost. I wanted to ask a question about the Fairer Communities for All programme, and it's good to see that the work is underway in 6 high-need communities, the multidisciplinary team working in localities. I wanted to know what are those 6 localities, and also in terms of the agreed project outcomes, it refers to working with elected members to streamline bureaucracy. So I wondered what that was going to look like. And can I ask, are there any further communities in the pipeline within the programme which will be worked with within the programme timescales of ending March 2027?
Thank you. Paul Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. In terms of the excuse me, in terms of the 6 localities, we have the 3 pilot localities. So that's Highland Perthshire, that is Letham, and that's Cooper Angus. And then we have 3 more identified, which are Perth City, Crieff, and Rattray. Possibly looking at Alyth as well as an extra one on top of that, and has been identified on the basis of need. In terms of your point about elected member involvement, absolutely, we fully want elected members to be involved in this process. We'll be having some ward meetings with those particular wards for the 3 new localities I've mentioned in the next few weeks to sort of set that up. What that looks like, I think I wouldn't want to be too prescriptive at this point. I think we want to try and co-design that and do what's appropriate for each locality, each area that we're working in, depending on the issues we're trying to tackle. So I think we would look to develop that in partnership.
Thanks very much for that. And are there any plans to work with other localities within the project timescale?
There are plans, there are wider pieces of work within this programme as well to look at the wider Perth and Kinross area. No specific plans as yet for other localities, but again, we would do that on the basis of need. If we had capacity to do that, we would certainly look to do that.
Okay, and Claire Miller to add.
Yeah, I think just to add a little bit more sort of context to the wider programme. I know that we've got a sort of an update based on sort of progress from I think the last report, but I think just to remind councillors that what we've undertaken here is we started this project off in terms of multidisciplinary working. We've had obviously the work in terms of the Fairer Futures and the Scottish Government activity. We've got the whole family wellbeing work, and we have pulled in the communities review, the community engagement review that had been previously led by Fiona Robertson. That has all been pulled under the new strategic lead role for Elaine Ritchie, who's obviously now got responsibility for housing and communities, by pulling all of these services together. And indeed, she is the strategic lead with the focus for working in partnership with communities. So we've done some really good, groundwork. Paul's given an overview in terms of the plan and where we're going. And supporting this activity, we've obviously worked very closely over the course of the last few months with the Community Planning Partnership. We've got a refocus of their key priorities with that real focus on employability, poverty and health and well-being. Next steps of the work kind of at a more strategic level very much are looking at some of the locality sort of place-based approaches that are happening across health and social care partners, that are happening certainly within the education service. So we've kind of been engaging with colleagues across education, and you're all aware obviously of the work that's happening in terms of Pitlochry and Cooper Angus in terms of the property related activity. Hot off the press, obviously, we've got Programme for Government. That is a continued sort of restated focus in terms of poverty, economic growth, and indeed sort of place-based approaches. Other work that is underway that may be of interest to councillors is some of the work that we're doing round and about the value of prevention and indeed social return on investment. Certainly a couple of areas I know that yourself and indeed Councillor Stewart have been quite interested in recently. We have got a workshop planned for early next month on the value of prevention and preventative spend. That will be attended by, I think, most of our strategic leads and indeed managers and frontline workers and partners, supported by the Scottish Government and the Fraser of Allender. And we're working very closely with the Improvement Service in relation to the social return on investment. So more to follow on that, but some good work that's underway that underpins the Fairer Futures for All work that you're all aware of.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Colin Stewart next.
Thanks, Provost. It was to ask about the Perth Secondary Estate review as part of the Transformation and Change Programme. I noticed that one of the agreed project outcomes is to consider future requirement for substantial investment in multiple buildings. But I wondered why we would then include only the Perth City Secondary Estate in that scope rather than the wider across Perth Kinross Secondary Estate.
Stephen Crawford.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The secondary school estate review that was approved at council in January 24 was about the secondary school estate within Perth. The investment in other buildings outside Perth would be addressed by our ongoing condition survey report, our condition survey proposals, and our capital plan, both revenue and capital plans. So, but the secondary school estate review is focused on the Perth City's secondary estate.
Thank you.
Chief Executive wants to add.
Thank you, Provost, and just to offer a degree of reassurance to Councillor Stewart, there is a wider work on our 30-year investment programme, including all of our asset portfolios, so education is part of that, and that's work that has already been cited initially with the CIAG group, but more detail to come back to CIAG, which is representatives from all of the political groups, so that work will be developed over the course of this year, and at an appropriate point we'll come back to Council.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, Provost. My question is on page 127. It's about public transport in the community, and on the table on that page in box 5, there's some information there about the distribution of MPVs to community transport groups, including at the bottom one which is coming to my area in Aberfeldy. I just wondered if we could get some more information about which group will be operating the MPV and when it's likely to arrive, and how it's seen that the vehicle will be used to the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Provost Margaret Royal. Yes, sorry, I was just saying Margaret Royal can answer that question. She's online.
Thanks very much, Councillor Duff. Yes, I can confirm that it will be Tay Valley Connections that will receive the vehicle, and we actually already have the vehicle that has been delivered, and Ford got it to us much earlier than they'd initially indicated when we ordered it. So that has delayed us handing it over to the group because they're not quite ready to receive it yet. And so we're busy with consultancy support and, you know, a community transport expert scoping out the service level agreement and how the car will be used. One of the main uses that we anticipate for it is to support the Service 91, which you'll be aware finishes quite early in the afternoon, and due to resource difficulties of bus drivers and operators, they can't operate after that, and so the car would be there. It's a neat seat vehicle so that people could travel back to the villages and Upper Tay area later than at the moment. And unfortunately as well, the initial community transport expert that we had that was going to greatly insist in setting all this up suddenly passed away, and so that somewhat delayed it, because then we had to secure a replacement expert and sort of start the process from there. But it should be, we're hoping later this midsummer, that I would say the end of June, that the car will be out and delivering transport. We've identified a parking space for it, which funnily enough was quite a challenge, but we've got a 24-hour parking space that they secure that they can keep it at now, and we'll be updating once we have the more details of the operation confirmed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a follow-up, Provost. In relation to driving of the vehicle, is it just a standard driving licence, or are there other conditions that are required?
No, because it's an 8-passenger seat vehicle, the driver will only require a car driving licence. And that was one of the reasons that we didn't get a vehicle over those seats, because it is a challenge to secure drivers that have got minibus driving licence or a full bus driving licence, and we tried previously to recruit additional drivers in the Aberfeldy area that had minibus licences, and to no avail, and so that was part of the reason that we just ordered the 8-seat vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Final question, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to ask a question on page 117. It talks about customer services transformation. It mentions phases 1 and 2, and then suggests that phase 1 is all bar complete, really. So it looks to me like there's really good progress. Are we going for next March as the completion date, or we're ahead of the game?
Taylor?
Yeah, thank you very much. There is incredibly good progress. There's been a power of work done by colleagues on the Customer Services Board, and Liz College as our Customer Service Centre Manager. In terms of the original options paper and phase 1 that was approved by the Transformation Board, that involved setting up 2 hubs, one of which was what we termed a money hub, but it was billing, collection, revs and bends, all calls really of a financial nature to ensure holistic support for citizens. And the other was environment, infrastructure, everything else, really the customer service centre. So that was all undertaken as part of phase 1, along with areas of the council where calls were coming in out with that. So that included the parking team and housing repairs, and housing repairs was the last part of that phase 1, and it was complete by the 31st of March just past. Phase 2 is starting just now, and there has obviously been again a power of work done, but there's significant work to be taken forward and looking at options and workshops and things as we move forward on housing area offices, and then we need to look at what the solution might be for calls that come in to those areas. So the plan with that is to complete that by the end of this year.
Thank you very much. Charlene, thank you very much for answering members' questions. I'd like to invite the Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thanks, Provost, and thanks, Charlene, and everybody else who answered the questions, because as we know, transformation covers a gamut of services within the council. Our transformation and change programme has been a cornerstone of our efforts to enhance the delivery of services to the people of Perth and Kinross, particularly those in greatest need. The overarching aim of the programme is to support the delivery of our vision of a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live well, free from poverty and equality, together with the strategic priorities and key objectives outlined in our corporate plan. This report includes an appendix which provides comprehensive detailed updates on each of the 15 projects within phase 2 of the Transformation and Change programme. These updates highlight key achievements, milestones and challenges faced during the 6-month reporting period, allowing for greater transparency and communication on the programme itself. It also demonstrates the early benefits of projects already being realised, which are highlighted along with the positive impact of the programme on our organisation and the communities we serve. For example, Leadership Phase 2 savings of £742,000 have already been identified for 25-26, and similarly, our Strategic Commissioning and Procurement project has identified savings of £350,000. We have also secured external funding based on the success of the work already completed to expand the Fairer Communities for All programme into 25-26 and beyond. In addition to this, we have made significant progress in the school recycling improvement project, engaging pupils and teachers in the Zero Waste and Operations programme. We have developed the career-long professional learning pathways through our additional support needs programme, improving support and guidance for 16+ transitions. To ensure that we are engaging widely in the programme, we have carried out extensive engagement activities through service design, events, workshops, focus groups, online questionnaires, surveys, virtual meetings and research. These activities have been crucial in gathering feedback and ensuring that we are involving people in transformational change that impacts on them. Additionally, we have introduced a series of regular briefings on the transformation and change programmes for elected members, covering specific areas such as whole family wellbeing, additional support needs and smarter working. Our Programme Management Office has been instrumental in focusing, coordinating and providing regular monitoring across all areas of the programme. This has led to improved consistency, clear support structures and more accountability in terms of monitoring and reporting. The PMO's efforts have ensured that we maintain momentum and stay on track with our objectives. Our ongoing cultural change programme has been designed to support our staff, set the right conditions and enable change as we move through our transformation programme. We have continued to focus on our purpose, vision and values, ensuring that these are reflected in our behaviours and that we are all working in a culture where everyone is valued and treated with respect. In conclusion, the Transformation and Change programme has made significant progress over the last 6 months, and today's report has reaffirmed that we are on the right track. We must continue with this work and be determined and optimistic, continuing to engage and involve people who receive our services to ensure the successful implementation of the programme and address any challenges that arise. I'm sure together we can make a difference and continue to focus on delivering a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live life well. Transformation is something that will never stop. We have to continually transform as we're buffeted by outside agencies and problems across the world that affect us all here in Perth and Kinross. As long as we continue to transform and adapt, we will be a successful local authority. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader, second.
Provost, colleagues, Perth and Kinross Council is fully committed to transformation and change as we seek to deploy our resources as effectively as possible and to extract best value and maximum benefit for each public pound we spend on behalf of the people of Perth and Kinross. Thanks go to the executive and senior leadership teams and to Charlene, in particular, the interim strategic lead, for getting their sleeves rolled up and driving forward this important programme of change, which of course is not without its considerable human and financial resource challenges. But we must all accept, and I hope we do, that transformation and change, as the leader has just said, is absolutely business as usual going forward for this council. The 15 projects listed cover many of the highly important areas of service delivery that underpin this council's unanimously agreed corporate priorities. These cover work streams as diverse and as vital as enhancing the quality of learning environments and specialist support for children and young people with additional support needs. A review of our employability services, which are key to future economic growth and tackling poverty within our society. And an in-depth review of public transport in the community, including home to school transport. And indeed, councillors will have received an update on this work stream whilst we've been in this meeting. And obviously, we're also looking at how we best deliver services currently provided through Live Active Leisure, Perth Theatre and Concert Hall, and Culture Perth and Kinross. These are just a few of the 15 projects that are within this overall work stream. But it will be evident to all just how wide-ranging this transformation and change programme is. Provost, I'm delighted to second this paper, and I strongly urge support from across the chamber to underpin and endorse this massive effort by officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor McCall with first comment, please.
Thank you, Provost. And I first of all like to thank Charlene and the team for the presentation of this report. It's very easy to read and follow and understand, and so I'm very thankful for that. But particularly I'd like to just make a comment on the project on strategic procurement and commissioning project, which I'm delighted to see is in there. I think it is often an overlooked aspect of our business and local authorities generally. I know from engaging with the team, I want to thank them also for their time afforded to me before, that they've made significant progress, and perhaps the one that will be most beneficial in the long term to the council will be the the contract and supplier management function. I fully expect that coming out of that, there will be a further transformative work required to look at processes and the way that we work in terms of identifying specifications, etc. So it's really just a vote of thanks, Provost, to the team, to Charlene overall, but also to Lisa and the team in strategic procurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCall. Councillor Donaldson next, please.
Thank you, Provost. Like Councillor McCall, I too would like to thank Charlene and her team for this paper. It's thorough, it's comprehensive. You know, I think it's about 5 years ago, we abandoned what was then our transformation programme. I remember at the time I found that decision really inexplicable. And indeed, I seem to recall it coming up at Audit Committee. But that was then. This is now. But I'd also add, we have quite a bit further to go. With many of the projects, we have here completion dates, but it's an ongoing process. And this is now part of the fabric of what we as a council are about. And this will continue not just under this administration, but under the next administration. I really think this is a very well set out paper. I'm not going to drill down into all the projects, although looking at them, I certainly think Councillor McCall used to be on Scotland Excel. I've taken over that role, and I think I'm going to have to learn up quite a bit more on strategic procurement and commissioning over coming weeks. It's not without risk, some of these projects. It's very difficult on artificial intelligence to predict with certainty just how that will develop, because the technology is just changing again and again and again. But if we don't keep up to date with that, then we have far, far greater problems. This is not just about savings and efficiencies, although it is that. It's also about how we can improve and deliver services and provide better outcomes for our local people. It's also for our staff to make their jobs enriched, that they're not just working in silos, that they can experience different areas of council work and work with different areas. And I think there, the point Charlene made about project management office, their role is not just to oversee and monitor individual projects, it's to establish the linkage between the projects, and heavens, that may lead on to other projects yet to come, and perhaps we can't envisage. But I think it's good progress, and I'm pleased that we are making, I think, significant changes to the way we work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, convener. There's been an awful lot said. I'd just like to say well done to Charlene, everybody involved. Fantastic work. Well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. Councillor Duff next.
Thanks, Provost. I too would just like to thank Charlene and indeed all of the other leads on each element of the transformation programme for what is a significant amount of work in a very wide range of council service areas. From the report and indeed from the verbal updates we've had today, I think it appears that some very useful and indeed important progress has been made across each of these areas, and I certainly look forward to hearing about further progress in each of these areas through to completion in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Leader of the Council, would you like to sum up?
All I'd like to say is that it's good to hear that everybody's behind the transformation. It's not just about saving money, it's about making money go further, it's about involving communities, and I think everyone across the chamber agrees with that. We've already thanked officers for their work across all areas of the services, but it's the right thing to do, and I think the residents will see the benefit of it, so thanks.
Thank you very much. Members, can we agree the report? Thank you. Members, the Deputy Provost will take items 9, 10 and 11.
Good afternoon, Council. We now move to item 9, the short-term let control area. And as agreed earlier, we have a deputation, and trusting that she is online and ready, I would ask Ms. Fiona Campbell to make her deputation, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes, and I will give you a warning half a minute before your time is up.
Thank you. Just checking you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
Great, fantastic. Provost Councillors, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to speak. Today you're being asked to revisit a planning control area proposal for Highland Perthshire that this council rightly rejected in February 2024. I must be absolutely clear, nothing material has changed since that decision except the political arithmetic in this room. This is not evidence-led policy making. The facts remain: first, this planning control area will not fix the housing problems. It cannot touch long-term empty homes or second homes, both far more prevalent than short-term lets. Across Perth and Kinross, only 1.7% of properties are short-term lets, compared to 3.5% sitting empty. In Dunkeld and Burnham, council data wrongly claims 15% short-term let saturation, when actual self-catering units account for just 5.7%. This is a fundamental misrepresentation. It's critical to differentiate between self-catering units and second homes. Second homes generate no economic benefit. You are being asked to legislate on flawed figures. Second, it scapegoats a legitimate sector. Short-term lets are not the cause of housing scarcity, but they're being treated as such. This narrative ignores larger structural issues: a lack of new supply, demographic shifts, and poor delivery of affordable homes. It's notable that 53% of resident responses to consultation support a planning control area. This has been driven by a growing anti-STL narrative. To suggest this is a silver bullet to fix housing or affordable homes and rents is disingenuous at best. Third, the economic cost could be extremely severe. Independent analysis from Bigger Economics show that short-term lets in Perth and Kinross generate over £51 million in local economic value and support nearly 1,800 jobs. On average, each short-term let contributes more than 3 times the economic output of a private home. These are not faceless corporations. 70% of self-catering operators are women, 60% are over 50, and more than half own just one property. These are community-based, often family-run businesses. They're not private homes, they're hospitality businesses critical to the tourism ecosystem. They generate employment, support cleaners, decorators, service providers, and many more. Guests bolster local economies in restaurants, attractions, and undertaking activities. Their economic benefit reaches far beyond one building. It reaches the entire community. Fourth, there are serious legal risks. The recent judicial review of Edinburgh's planning control area ruled parts of that policy unfair and illogical. Retrospective application of planning powers under 26B of the Planning Act was deemed unlawful. Perth and Kinross risks falling under the same legal trap and the associated costs to the public purse if a challenge is pursued. And rest assured, it will be pursued if there's a need to do so. Fifth, there is no evidence that this approach works. The Highland Council introduced a planning control area in March 2024, triggering over 200 applications, overwhelming their planning system and creating confusion and huge expense for the sector. 1 year on, there is zero evidence that it's delivered a single additional home to the community. We urge you not to replicate a failing model. Finally, where is the demand analysis? Where is the risk analysis? Before imposing sweeping regulatory measures, any responsible policymaker should first evaluate the unintended consequences, the potential collapse of small tourism enterprises, the knock-on effects to local supply chain, or the legal liabilities arising from unlawful application of planning powers. Policy without this due diligence is not just careless, it's dangerous. Colleagues, this is not about dodging tough decisions, it's about making the right ones. The self-catering community calls on you to stand up for integrity in data, fairness in policy, support for our rural economies. Highland Perth's housing needs will not be met by penalising tourism micro-businesses. They will be met by building homes, tackling second homes, and taking an honest, evidence-led approach to reform. This proposal fails on every count. It would do harm and to no good end. Please vote against the planning control area, not for it, just because we've been told to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for being keeping well within your time at 4.5 minutes. Thank you very much. Before we address questions to Fiona Campbell, I have a point of clarification from Councillor Forbes. Angus.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Can I ask, there's no significant difference between this paper and the one that we voted on just a short while back. Can I ask, first of all, why this paper's back in front of us, and specifically, why is it at this committee and not at E&I as it was before?
My understanding is that we are perfectly entitled to bring the matter after a 6-month period, so that is what we're doing, and it's perfectly proper to bring it to full council as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. That wasn't really my question. My question was, why is it here? Is it because the political arithmetic is better for the administration at this meeting?
Councillor Lang, the council leader would like to come in. Thank you.
Yes, I find it very interesting. Councillor Forbes has forgotten about the school CPU, where you brought it forward, and after going through discussion at a MOG, and it was decided that we wouldn't bring it forward, and then you brought it back again to the next committee six months later to drive it through with your figures. So there is a precedent to bringing something back. I think it's such an important thing that the whole council should do it rather than a subcommittee of the council, and I think that everybody who lives in that and has voted in that area should have the chance to show where their allegiance lies, or what they think is the best way forward with this. I've had letters from development trusts both in Aberfeldy and Dunkeld asking for me to support this, and I will be supporting it. So that's why it's coming back.
Thank you. We now have an opportunity to ask questions of Fiona Campbell, and I was just going to say there are no questions, but they're coming in now. The first question, Councillor Ken Harvey. Ken.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you, Vice Convener. Question I have, Fiona, you discussed this at the last couple of times you've been here. What is your alternative to this plan, or is your position that there is no alternative to this plan? We shouldn't be doing anything with short-term lets. Thanks.
Fiona, did you hear the question? I think Fiona has gone. Is there anything we can do to bring her back in? Okay, it would appear that Fiona has left the call, and we do not have the opportunity to ask questions of her. I think we have no option but to go on to introduce the report, and I would call on Nicholas Swarovski, our Place Strategies Manager, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Approval is sought from the Council to commence the notice of proposal to introduce a short-term let control area in the northern part of the Council area, the Highland and North East.
Sorry, can I ask you to hang on a minute? First of all, point of clarification of the Council Leader.
Thanks. I was just wondering if it was made clear to Ms Campbell that she would have to stay, or we would like her to stay to answer questions, or if she wasn't aware of that.
I understand that it was made clear to her.
Thank you.
Nicola, if you'd like to go on, thank you. If I understand efforts are being made to get back to Fiona Campbell, if she can be brought back in, as soon as she is back in, we will revert to her with questions. Thank you. But Nicola, please go on now.
Thank you. I hadn't got very far, so I'll start again. Approval is sought from the Council to commence the notice of proposal to introduce a short-term let control area in the northern part of the Council area, so the Highland and North Eastern housing areas. Legislation was introduced in 2021 that permitted planning authorities, should they choose to introduce it, to treat the use of residential properties used for commercial short-term lets as an automatic material change of use that requires planning permission. At present, planning permission is only required for the use of a property as a short-term let if a material change of use occurs, or it's a change from a flat, which has always been considered as a material change of use. If introduced, the short-term let control area would allow consideration of dwelling houses, so those in use as residential as we would normally expect, not just flats, for its impact on housing supply, and also consideration of residential amenity when a change of use to a short-term let is applied for through the planning application process. The Council is minded to support the recommendation. The evidence gathered will be submitted to Scottish ministers alongside the Council's statement of reasons following the consultation period. There are currently 2 short-term let control areas in Scotland, the entirety of the City of Edinburgh and the Badenoch and Strathspey ward of Highland Council area. In the report, you'll see that the legislative context for the proposal and the various stages to be undertaken are set out. Paragraph 4.2 of the report sets out the purpose of the control area, and paragraph 4.6 sets out some specific scenario outcomes. One of the most important points is that if the designation goes ahead, the control area cannot be applied retrospectively. It was this element that was challenged in the Edinburgh case, not the control area. It has never been suggested that Perth and Kinross would try or even attempt to apply it retrospectively. And it's noted that clear guidance is required should the control area be introduced to explain that only new short-term lets would be required to apply for planning permission. We are not looking to impact on anything that already exists. Should the Council support the recommendation, the proposal will be advertised and representations invited. A further report will be brought back to full Council, setting out the Council's response to those representations, and subject to those responses, we would then seek approval to submit that to Scottish ministers in line with government policy. Queries have been raised, as you've heard, about some of the stats and specifically Dunkeld and Burnham. They're not figures that we as officers recognise. The report states 5.7% of short-term lets and 5.2% of empty properties, totalling 10.9%, not the 15% that was quoted. Aside from that, anyway, the data has been updated. We now have the short-term let licensing data that we can use and is part of the evidence report that's appended to the report. So in summary, the short-term let control area is one tool alongside council tax for second homes, developer contributions that we take for affordable homes, local development plan allocations, and the Perth and Kinross New Build programme, by which through all of that, the Council gives itself an option to support the future balance of tourism accommodation provision against the housing needs of local residents, businesses and services in the communities. At this point, we are seeking approval to formally ask what residents, businesses and services think of introducing a planning control area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Nicola, and questions for officers. If Fiona is able to be brought back, we will revert to questions to her. I understand we've not been able to get hold of her. So questions for officers, and the first is from Councillor Forbes. Angus.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Can I ask what evidence is there that this specific intervention will free up houses for local people? What is our target for the residences that will be freed up for local people? In what time frame should it proceed, or do we expect that to happen? And will we get the opportunity to revisit this should our ambition not be realised?
Thank you. In my haste to get through my introduction, I forgot to say that I am surrounded by officers that have some of the information as well. We have 2 members of the housing strategy team, somebody from the development plans team, and Colin as well from the solicitor. In terms of that, there isn't a target for short-term lets. The point of the proposal is that every new, that's the critical bit, every new short-term let would be considered through a planning application process. So I think it's paragraph 4.6 sets out those considerations. So there's a high chance that some of them, alongside most planning applications, are generally approved. You can approve that. It's not that this is looking to control that in that way. So it's not that we would say, I don't know, 56 in a certain settlement, and once we reach that, that's not the way that this works. It's very dependent, as any planning application is, on a case-by-case basis. Will it have an impact on the housing supply or residential amenity? In terms of time frame, clearly it would take some time to put the control area in place. We have to go through the consultation, it has to come back to council for a decision, and then off to Scottish ministers for their decision. So in terms of that time frame for putting it in place, we're probably 12 months or possibly even longer away from that being implemented. In terms of time frame for it having an impact, it's a bit of an unknown. As has been pointed out, Highland Council have had it in place for 12 months. We have spoken to Highland and we've spoken to Edinburgh recently. They're not saying it was the golden bullet, but we're not saying that either. It's one of many tools that we can have in terms of, I've mentioned them, council tax for second homes, delivery of affordable homes. It's about ensuring that we're keeping that housing supply. And it's a balance, as it always is with planning applications. And then in terms of revisiting, yes, we would continually monitor that to see whether it's happened, see whether we're seeing that extra supply. And some of it will come down to what we build as well. It's like I say, it's not just around the control area, it's about the building that we can put into the area as well. So we would monitor. If it's not working, we would look again at it. If it is working, we could look at further areas as well. So it could go one of two ways.
Quick one. Yeah, we'll be quick, I promise. So my concern here is that one of the objectives is to make homes more available for people to live in and buy. But if I'm understanding your answer correctly, we don't actually have a target, so we'll never be able to say if this has been successful. We're not setting a target of 100 homes over the next year or 50 homes, and that's my concern. We don't have a target, so therefore we can't measure it.
Thank you. I mean, I would take it as a positive that there isn't that level of control on it. That's not the point of it. What we do have is an overall figure that we're trying to deliver in terms of housing delivery. We're not in control of whether somebody uses their own personal house for a short-term let at this point. What we're trying to do is ensure that we have some greater element of control through that, but it wouldn't be possible to put a number against it in terms of a target.
Thank you.
But we do have control because they have to apply for a license.
Councillor Forbes.
Well, I'm just one.
No, you've had a follow up. Come back with a second question, please, in due course. Bailey. Thank you. Alistair.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My question is regarding the data in section 3.7 and then comparing that with 3.9. So in section 3.7, we learned that there are around about 1,700 short-term lets across Perth and Kinross. And then in 3.9, the evidence from Bigger Economics commissioned by the Association of Self-Caterers tells us that the sector supports just over 1,700 jobs in the area. My question is sort of about what I might call a credibility gap between those numbers, because those numbers, when they're compared, would suggest that each short-term let supports more than one full-time job in the local economy. I wonder if our officers have seen other evidence that can corroborate that, or whether the Bigger Economics study is an anomaly. Thank you.
I'm afraid I'm not aware of any stats in terms of a further report. That's the most up-to-date report that we've seen. Whether colleagues online have any further evidence that they can bring in. Stephanie, I don't know if you have anything.
Good morning. No, I think I suspect it is the different analyses or different areas that they're looking at, but I can't provide any further clarity. Apologies.
I think Serge Moran is indicating that he can come in. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Billy. Yeah, the figures that are quoted in the paper are directly lifted from the study from the Association of Health Caterers. It is obviously an estimation from the association. It has been commissioned by the association, and the consultant who did the report has used the current kind of usual methodology to calculate the GVA impact and the job impact. As any methodology, there are obviously assumptions that we've not had, the access to, but it would be easy to access the assumptions from the report. But these assumptions may explain these discrepancies, or your calculation about one short-term led to a job. So I think we will have to go down into the assumptions there. Some of the assumptions could be generous depending on the methodology you've used. So, but to be transparent and to offer all the information available to the council, we included that in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braun. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. In the impact value assessment, it talks about extra planning applications, obviously, and it mentions the figure of 110. I'm not sure where that's come from, but of those, some could be rejected as they are, and a lot of those could then turn up at the local review body. Now, from a planning officer's point of view, obviously there's extra workload in preparing the case originally. If it goes to the LRB, it doesn't double the workload, but obviously there's more work involved in preparing the paperwork for that. Have we allowed for that? I mean, have we allowed for this extra workload on their existing planning team, who are also already under pressure, I suspect?
I'll start, and then maybe Colin will jump in. But in terms of the planning applications, as you say, we estimate around about 110 planning applications for the year. So 1, 2, or 3 on average per week. So it's not a huge increase. So it's not something that we think, I don't know, you need a new planning officer for or anything like that. It's something that we feel can be certainly undertaken within current remit.
Thank you. Councillor Duff. John.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I can just record initially our disappointment that we may not get the opportunity to ask Fiona Campbell any questions on this matter. My initial question is a fairly simple one, and hope you'll allow me a follow-up when I get the answer. Why has the Highland Perth region been chosen for this planning control area? Thank you.
So Highland has been chosen because it has the highest number of short-term lets and second homes as well. So there's figures in the evidence report that show you by housing market area, and that number is simply the highest in that area. As I said before, it's something that you would keep a monitoring element on, and if numbers increased in other areas, then you could look to do the same thing somewhere else.
Thank you, Provost. If I could follow that up then, thank you. From table 3.8, we can see that the growth in short-term lets is not actually in Highland area. It's the lowest growth area. It's more eastern, Greater Perth, and the Strathearn areas have a far higher growth in short-term lets, and given that we can't impact on existing ones, I would ask you to reflect on that. But also within the statistics in 3.7 of the 834 licences in Highland, or the 699 across Perth and Kinross, there's more detail in relation to that, because a number of these are home sharing short-term lets, and a number are for premises which will never be residential properties. So I wonder if you could advise me what percentage of the short-term lets are home sharing and non-residential properties. Thank you.
I don't have those stats in front of me at the minute in terms of short-term lets. I think there's 4 separate licenses that can be applied for. So what we're talking about is secondary lets, so the use of it for obviously short-term accommodation. Stephanie, I don't know if you've got anything in terms of non-residential.
The statistics provided in the report are only secondary letting. We've excluded home letting, home sharing, because the control area would not apply to those. So I hope that answers your question.
In relation to non-residential short-term lets?
Can I ask you to clarify what you mean by non-residential short-term lets?
Sure, certainly. There'll be a number of lodges and things like that which will never ever be fully residential properties, but they are holiday accommodation.
Sorry, yes. These would be something that the planning system classifies as unconventional lettings. At the moment, these are included in those secondary let stats because they are standalone. So they're all part of that number.
Thank you. And now, Councillor Mayor Carroll.
Thank you. I would just like to ask a general question about paragraph 4.2.3, where it states, is the proposal for the extensive refurbishment, one of the key considerations of the planning authority is this proposal for the extensive refurbishment of a long-term empty property? And I just wonder, have we got any evidence or any figures on what the percentage of such properties coming back into use has been due to short-term let use? Thank you.
I was going to do that once, wasn't I? No, not specifically. I'm not aware of anything in terms of empty homes back into short-term lets. In terms of empty homes just across the area, it's around about sort of 200 properties that we're talking about. But in terms of the reason it's listed in the paragraph that you've noted, is clearly that's a positive, isn't it? That if a long-term empty is brought back into use and through a short-term let, and that's what I talked about in terms of the balance of the planning application process that would be considered. We could have a look, but I'm not sure how easy it is to actually get that data in terms of long-term empty use, because that would be, I guess, council tax data back to short-term lets if there's a license. But we could have a look to see whether it's possible to get that.
Sorry, I just wondered if there had been some, noted increase in those properties coming back, but obviously not. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Allen, Keith.
Thank you, Vice Convener. There's a link on page 151, section 7, and it goes on, it's the impact and value assessment at 7.1.1. It talks about corporate plan, and it's suggesting that this is going to tackle poverty, yes, tackle climate change and supporting sustainable places, yes, developing a resilient, stronger and greener local economy, yes. I just wonder, can you clarify some of that for me, please?
Yeah, in terms of links to poverty, then obviously that's around housing supply and keeping housing supply increasing. Ideally, housing supply within that area allows people more opportunities. So whilst these may not initially be properties that people first move into, they can be properties in terms of that move on, and that's often the problem, that there isn't that move on accommodation. In terms of climate change, I mean, again, it's what we're talking about is having that opportunity to consider it. So the empty home example is a really good example. If that was an empty home coming back into use, then clearly that would be a positive because it's the sustainable use of an existing building. Is that? Oh, and sorry, the third one was climate change, poverty, and yes, I mean, that again sort of links into the poverty element as well in terms of the housing supply, and it's known that, and it may sometimes be temporary, but employers have struggled to have people come in and work because they've simply not had that housing accommodation in that area. People have been bussed in, clearly not terribly sustainable. So it's the whole element of that consideration of the housing supply, really.
Thank you for trying to answer that. I'm not convinced that this is going to help poverty in any way, because people who are in that poverty gap are not going to be buying houses anyway. But thank you for that. Cheers.
Thank you. I understand that we've been able to get Fiona Campbell back into the meeting. We will therefore revert to questions to her now. Can I just check, Fiona Campbell, that you are there?
I am indeed here. Apologies.
No worries. Thank you very much. We have a number of questions for you, and the first one is from Councillor Harvey. Ken.
Okay, thanks, Vice Convener. Thanks, Fiona, for coming back. My question was, you probably recall it from the previous time I asked when you appeared in front of the committee. You're obviously not in favour of this proposal. Are you in favour of any other similar proposal to deal with some of the issues here, or are you opposed to this type of proposal in total? Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. I think what we are in support of is working with the Scottish Government to introduce a new use class order, which would completely ameliorate the situation in terms of when and where you need planning permission to operate a short-term let. That is the only way that we can now actually support and protect every single self-catering unit in Scotland. So what I would propose is that rather than introducing a planning control area, which isn't going to fix the housing crisis, that you support our request for a new use class order so that you understand exactly what the properties are being used for. Any new property across the whole area, not just a planning control area, would require planning permission to change of use, whether it's a flat, a large property, etc. So I'm looking at longer term solutions rather than a knee-jerk reaction. And the planning control area is a knee-jerk reaction that's not proven to work.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Barrett, Peter.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I've got a few parts to my question, so I can either return to questions later. But the first one was with regard to the allegation in the lobbying document that we received that the PCA is being used to scapegoat the illegitimate business sector. I wouldn't have expected our head of legal services to allow any report before this council which was guilty of such a thing, and I couldn't see anything in the report or in the lobby document to support or substantiate the claim of the ASSC. So I would like to ask Fiona, what evidence does she have for making that claim?
There has been a growing anti-short-term let lobby for a number of years. It started off in America in 2017. It's come across to the UK and to Scotland, courtesy of our Green colleagues. And the result is that we are seen as bad in our communities. The difference is that actually self-catering units have been very much integral to the tourism ecosystem and very much part of the critical accommodation sector for decades and decades and decades. Unfortunately, that reputation has been somewhat tarnished by one particular online platform that I won't name. But the fact that remains, if you look at our bigger report, the bigger economic report, which was published on the 11th of December 2024, it is very clear that we are not the cause of the housing crisis, despite the media and political narrative that has been growing of late. So unfortunately, we are being scapegoated, and it's not just in Perth and Kinross by any stretch of the imagination. It's across the whole of Scotland, indeed across the whole of the world. So these are just facts. The fact remains there are 3.5 times more empty homes than there are self-catering units. And I think it's really sensible for the policymakers worldwide to look at actually addressing the key drivers of that housing crisis and not scapegoat our sector that contributes, as I say, £51 million to the Perth and Kinross economy.
Okay, so there's nothing in the report to substantiate your claim. Secondly, could I ask you, under paragraph 5 of your document, you refer to the legal ruling rendering a PCA legally risky. If there is to be no retrospective application of the PCA, what legal risks are the ASSC referring to?
I'm very glad that you understand that it can't be applied retrospectively. I think it's more of a warning that that is what's happened in both Edinburgh and Highland Council, Badenoch and Strathspey Ward 20, and they've both been brought to account over it. So if Perth Kinross is cognizant that they cannot apply it retrospectively, that's fine. Brilliant.
Okay, so there's no risk there. Finally, can I ask
I'm
under
merely highlighting
ask you under paragraph 8?
Can you come back to a second?
Oh, sure.
In due course, thanks. Can I call on Councillor Forbes now? Question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. Fiona, nice to be speaking to you today. And I have absolute faith in our head of legal services, and I would suggest if this document was circulated to all of us, then there's absolutely nothing in it for us to be concerned about. I wonder, Fiona, given that Perth and Kinross are one of the very few councils, I'm talking about licensing here rather than a PCA, to treat multiple units on the same site as individuals, and the fact that over the last year, short-term let operators are having to pay for a licence, and we're also debating whether we should have a visitor levy or not. Can you just give us an outline of the feeling within the community of short-term let owners, please?
Indeed. I mean, we are facing a barrage of a cumulative impact of regulatory interventions, which are making our businesses incredibly difficult to operate and making them more and more vulnerable. As I've said before, the £51 million that we generate for local authority is at risk right now. Perth Kinross is an outlier in terms of the way they are dealing with multiple licences on one site. We have been discussing this with Perth Kinross since 2022. We are now discussing it with the Scottish Government to try and address that guidance, so that will be addressed. Perth Kinross are one of 4 local authorities that are treating the number of licences on one premise incorrectly as per Scottish Government guidance. The issues are, as I say, cumulative. It is not just the licensing, it is planning. Planning is the most significant risk for our sector right now, which is why I'm urging against jumping into a planning control area on the basis of it might look like a good idea, but actually what's it going to achieve? It costs an awful lot of money to local planning authorities, an awful lot of administration, and there's also an awful lot of risk, because planning is a very, very grey area. The materiality of change of use is something that we are going to be challenging at a national level as well. So if I were Perth Kinross, I wouldn't jump into this. And then, of course, a visitor levy. Now, a visitor levy, we all understand the rationale behind it. We appreciate that local authorities are incredibly strapped for cash, and this could be a really good opportunity. But again, if it's implemented wrong, then it will be hugely damaging to the tourism economy. So what we have done as a sector driven by the Scottish Tourism Alliance is we have offered some solutions to the Scottish Government, again, appreciating that Perth and Kinross can only do what they can with the existing legislation. We are trying to amend the national legislation so that it does not damage tourism or businesses. So it's about Perth and Kinross supporting perhaps their businesses and their tourism industry and supporting industry solutions to some of the perceived challenges. We're not saying it's a bad idea. We're not calling into question the legality of the planning control area. We are just highlighting some of the pitfalls and possible unintended consequences.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Illingworth, a point of clarification from Councillor Liz Barrett.
Yes, could I please ask for clarification from legal? If Ms Campbell just said we were in breach of guidance, is that true? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
No, we're not in breach of guidance. There's been different interpretations of guidance, but the crucial point here is that the fee structure has to be self-funding. And the whole point of the SLT framework is to ensure that there are adequate safety checks and checks across every property. We have chosen to go on a number of each property. If someone, say, for example, has 20 properties, each property, even if they're located in the same vicinity, will be dealt with separately because each require the safety checks, etc. So most of the fees are around securing the appropriate checks to ensure that properties are safe for the public to use. If we went to a single application for multiple premises, we would simply have to up that fee for those premises by 20 times because the work is not any different. It has to be self-funding. That's the way it operates. And one of the benefits of doing them on an individual basis is that if someone has 20 units on the same site, 19 of them of which pass safety checks, but one doesn't, then they can earn money from the 19 that are licensed and they only have the detriment of the one that isn't. There is nothing to suggest that the application of the law is wrong or flawed. And indeed, a number of authorities who have taken a different approach are rethinking that or significantly increasing the fees. We have checked with our counterparts across the country as well. So please be assured.
Thank you, Lisa. Just to clarify, so if we didn't do it that way, we would be increasing the fees for all operators, and so everyone else in the industry would be penalised by the ones who have a large number of units. Is that what you mean?
The system has to be self-funding, so the fees would have to be recouped some way, and that would be by increasing fees across the board.
Thank you. We now move to your question, Councillor Illingworth. David.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I spoke to a leading estate agent, a leading Perthshire estate agency a few days ago, and she's reporting that she's getting lots of short-term lets to sell, and they're not going to private rental market, they're going to purchasers. Fiona, are you seeing short-term lets leaving the business and therefore damaging Perthshire businesses like the Pitlochry Festival Theatre as a consequence?
Thank you. What we are seeing across the whole of Scotland is that where short-term lets, or can we just call them self-catering units, are being sold, they are either going to second homeowners, thereby increasing and inflating housing prices, or they're being left as second homes. So they're either being left empty because people already own them, but they were renting them out to give a little bit of extra income, or they are being sold to second home owners. Therefore, it's a complete own goal, unfortunately. The large proportion of our sector are not ever going to be affordable homes, and that's the reality. So actually, this is a really significant way of distorting the housing market to the detriment of local communities.
Thank you. Councillor Lane, do you have a question just there?
No, I don't have a question. And
okay.
It was Councillor Barrett. I think I put in Councillor Barrett asked my question.
Okay. Thank you very much. In that case, we'll move to Councillor Duff. John.
Thank you. Morning, Fiona. It's nice to speak to you. When you, after you'd gone off the call, I had asked a question of our officers with regards to the percentage of short-term let premises which will never be permanent resident homes, because a number of them are built as holiday lets and not really capable of permanent living. Do you have any idea of what kind of percentage of short-term lets could never be, residential homes?
That's an incredibly good question. I don't have a figure on that, but you're absolutely right. Because of the way the Scottish Government has defined short-term let and or secondary let, a secondary let is also a shepherd's hut. So clearly that's not going to be a permanent dwelling for a family. So you're absolutely right. And what is really critical is that the data underpinning any policy intervention, such a planning control area, is that we understand what that means and what that does actually look like. And I don't think we have that. What I can tell you is that you know, in Perth Kinross, 1.7% of the housing stock are short-term lets. Is this going to fix what needs to be fixed? And that's the question that needs to be asked. But you're absolutely right to ask the question, what is the percentage of properties that were either built specifically for holiday accommodation, are glamping pods or shepherd's huts, etc., because that's really significant in making this very, very important decision.
Thank you very much. I understand now that Councillor Barrett, Peter, you have no follow-up questions. Okay, thank you very much. Not for Fiona. Okay, that's fine. In that case, I see no further questions for Fiona. So, Fiona, can I say thank you very much for presenting your deputation, and thank you for getting back to the meeting, and thank you very much for answering all the questions from members. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We will now return to questions for officers, and the next that I had was Councillor Kogali. Noel.
What exact percentage of housing pressure is caused in the areas by short-term lets, do we think? And how does that line up as opposed to other potential factors like the rate of housing development? I'm looking at a specific number if we've got it.
I'll just hand over to my colleague Stephanie, who can point out exactly where in the report that is.
Thank you for your question. In the evidence, Appendix 1 evidence paper on page 8, we have a figure that outlines the housing pressure. So you can see that it's Highland and North Eastern, where the individual factors of housing options, short-term lets, empty properties, affordability, percentage of inward migration into the owner occupation market have all been studied individually, and they're summarised in this table. And so you can see the relative impacts of short-term lets as well. And then there is the later table on page, excuse me while I scroll down to it, on page 23, that separates out further across the housing market areas and the target areas of study for second homes, empty homes. So for us, it's clear that Highland has the highest concentration, obviously because it's a tourist area, as well as northeastern parts of eastern housing market area. And when you combine, when you look at the concentrations of short-term lets and the pressures that are condensed in that study and that summary that I referred to initially, that is the indicate, and combined with what the communities are telling us, where people are struggling to get to live locally where they work, businesses are struggling to hire staff are constantly having housing issues locally, and that's affecting their business growth. It's that combination of all these indicators and factors that have come to the recommendation that it would be of benefit to consider the loss of residential homes to short-term lets in Highland housing market area and the northern half of eastern housing market area. Does that answer your question?
I suppose I might be misunderstanding, but I think those numbers reference the proportion of the local housing stock that is currently a short-term let. But I'm more looking for, essentially, the question I'm trying to get to, I suppose, is whether this is the most effective way of dealing with that, or it's, you know, essentially a tiny drip in the bucket that is a larger issue. Whether this is actually an effective way of doing it, given the negative impacts it might have on tourism.
I mean, yeah, thanks, Steph. As I'd indicated, it's one of the tools that can be used. So we're not saying this is the answer, and we're certainly not looking to impact on short-term lets. You know, that is absolutely not the point of this. It's about that balance It's about the housing supply, as Stephanie's indicated, and also about residential amenity. We probably talk slightly less around that, but it's also about whether it's appropriate for that use within that area. So the other things, I mean, to repeat them again, council tax for second homes and building more homes. You know, we're not denying that that inevitably would help, but in that sort of location, you're never going to have high numbers of building coming forward. We know that it's difficult to build in those areas, and that's part of the problem.
Thank you. And now we move to Councillor Illingworth. David.
Great, thank you. I met with a fabulous little business on Saturday which do historic tours around Perth. Are you aware of the risk that second homeowners who don't use their properties very much might be deterred from letting out their homes over the summer or when they're not using it, and therefore damage businesses like Pitlochry Festival Theatre or that tour company?
And in terms of the change, then it would be applying for planning permission as I've set out. So we're not saying that it wouldn't come forward. And if it's that sort of short-term let basis, then obviously it's part of the license as well. So we're conscious of that. And I keep repeating it, but it's the balance that we need to strike between the tourism element, because we know that that's important to Perth and Kinross, and the housing supply. So your point, absolutely, we're conscious of that, and we would be mindful of that through the planning application process.
Thank you. We now move to Councillor Robertson. William.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'm on page 149, and it says once a planning application is submitted, the planning authority would assess the potential cumulative impact of the short-term lets on the residential amenity and character of the local area. Now, does that mean there'll be a quota? And if there's not going to be a quota, if a person was going to apply for a permission to have a short-term let, would there be advice available from the planning authority to say, look, there's already 2 short-term lets in your street, so the chances of you getting a short-term let permission is small unless one of these short-term lets in your street is sold for another purpose. So I'm trying to work out just how in practice this will actually work, and what advice, because it's an expensive business applying for planning consent. So you don't want people to be wasting money applying for planning consent when the quota, if there is a quota, has already been met. And if there's not a quota, how do they get advice on the likelihood of them getting planning consent?
In terms of the quota, I've already said we wouldn't be looking to set a target, because as you've outlined, things change, don't they? So that is always the case with any sort of planning application. You're looking at it on a case-by-case basis at that point in time. So yes, things could change, which is why it would be dangerous for us to set that quota. Plus, we'd be effectively making a decision on a planning application in advance. So we're not able to do that. In terms of that advice, yes, I mean, we'd always support pre-application advice anyway, but it depends on that location. If it's on a street with a number of short-term lets, that's very different to a property out on its own and not near anywhere. So the considerations would be very different, but we would be seeking pre-application advice and just advising this is what we're aware of the minute. This is the guidance. We have a guidance note as well that sets all of that information out, and then yes, we'd look to say we could never say there's 2, therefore we wouldn't allow the 3rd, because it depends what it's coming forward as, but that would be part of the consideration.
So in the event of an applicant being refused because of the cumulative effect, that wouldn't debar them from reapplying if one of the properties in their street, the use of that changed?
No, not at all. I mean, people apply for planning permission all the time on numerous sites. So yes, that's something that they could look to do. And in terms of that quota, you know, levels would have to be quite significant in terms of making that change. You know, I don't want to put numbers on it because it will get kind of quoted around, but it would have to be a high proportion. You know, that's about the residential amenity and the change to, in that example, a street that would come about because, you know, a high proportion were short-term lets.
Thank you. We now move to the council leader, Grant.
Thanks. Just for some clarity, and maybe Lisa Simpson is over some of the claims made by Ms Campbell, can I have clarity that because there is no, we all know by reading the paper that this is not going to be applied retrospectively. So that therefore takes out the problems that Edinburgh and I would have over a judicial review. So that statement about we were risking a judicial review is incorrect, is it?
The challenge there was about the Edinburgh case was about it being retrospective. So look at all the existing short-term lets and then making them apply for planning permission because they're now in a control zone. That's never been what we've proposed at all. So that the nature of that challenge wouldn't be applicable to our policy at all.
Thank you. Just for further clarity, the other claim, one of the other claims that Ms Campbell made was about that Perth and Kinross were breaching the legislation regarding multiple short-term lets on the one site. Is that incorrect as well?
That is incorrect.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to Councillor Welsh, Jack.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. When this paper came before the E&I committee, David Littlejohn was the head of planning at that point, and he was explicitly asked in terms of Perth and Kinross as a council supporting the incredibly important tourism sector. My understanding was from the minutes of that meeting, he went to great lengths to reassure everyone in the committee that, in actual fact, that they were very much looking to support the tourism sector and would look very positively at developments coming forward that were specifically focused on developing tourism accommodation as opposed to conversion, for example, of domestic properties. Is that still the position of this council?
I mean, in short, yes, it's absolutely the position in terms of anything that came forward as purpose-built tourism accommodation would be supported, you know, subject to material considerations of any planning application. So yes, that position hasn't changed. And I wasn't here for that committee, but I've watched that committee back, and you're absolutely, David Littlejohn was absolutely clear that, you know, that's what this is about. It's about an element of control, yes, but a balance between everything else, but ensuring that we don't impact the tourism market.
Thank you. That was very clear.
Thank you very much. We now move to the first question from Councillor Stewart, but then that will be followed by second questions from Councillors Forbes and Councillor Barrett Peter. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Provost. I think my question is on the PKC interventions in the evidence report. And one of those is about rural homes. And I just wondered if we had a measure of how many affordable homes or council homes we had delivered in the area affected by the proposal today.
I don't have them to hand, but Katrina Walker, who is online, was looking at those figures.
Hi, good afternoon. We have in our annual housing land audit, we do monitor tenure completions in each of our housing market areas. The most up-to-date published information we have at the moment is dated from 2023. I'm looking at the 10-year completions there from local authority completions and housing association completions. There haven't been in the Highland housing market area since the 2021 reporting period. But I don't know if anyone in the housing strategy team would wish to comment on proposals that are in the strategic housing investment programme, perhaps.
Did you call on somebody else to come in with a contribution? No. Okay, Colin.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks very much for that answer. Just to be clear, because the sound was a bit hard to hear on this end, there were no affordable housing completions by the council or housing associations in the 2-year period up to 2023.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now move back to. Sorry, Councillor Leader.
Thanks. It's just a point of clarity on the fact that there's been is this down to, as has been spoken about many times, could you confirm it's because of the lack of available land coming up for the council to build affordable housing on? And that is the reason that we'd be delighted to build all sorts of housing in these areas, but there's just not the available land.
Yeah, I mean, it's land. It's a mixture of land constraints, house builders not necessarily wanting to build in that area, but viability plays into that. You know, that's quite a common thing that we hear. Obviously, we're going through the LDP3 process. That's something that we need to be very conscious of in terms of rural homes and those allocations. But as I said before, even if we make those allocations, we've got to have somebody come to build them, and we're never going to make allocations for, you know, hundreds, thousands of homes in that location. It's not appropriate because of everything else that we know about.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, Angus.
Thank you, Provost. Just picking up on the phrase that Councillor Ling used a second ago, which was affordable homes, and I get the principle behind this. I get the ideas that we need more affordable homes. So I'm wondering if the officers have done any research into the average value of a buy-to-let type home. And I'm also wondering if they've done any research into the potential that if we go ahead with this, it may detrimentally impact house values in this particular area.
Sorry, just buy to let, you mean in terms of properties that could be turned into short-term lets? I mean, that would be effectively, it's any private house could be turned into a short-term let. So that would be the average house price across that area. I'm afraid I don't have that today. Others may have that to hand, but obviously that's any house can be turned into a short-term let.
Sorry, just for clarity, what I was looking for was properties that are already short-term lets. That's what I was interested in, because I think the feeling we have here is that if we stop people buying houses to make them short-term lets, they'll suddenly be available to people to buy and live in, and you yourself referenced people being bused to work. Now, I know, for example, that House of Brewer bus people to work, but I'm kind of guessing that the people who are on that bus couldn't afford to buy a house, which would typically be used as short-term let. So that's what I'm trying to get at. Have we done any research into the likelihood of these houses being available and affordable to people who actually need them in that area?
We'd have to look at the stats in terms of taking the licenses as to then the value of those properties. So we don't have that figure to hand, but I mentioned earlier about whilst some of these properties may not be appropriate as first-time homes, if you like, if that's, you know, what you're referencing in terms of people coming in and purchasing properties, it's about the move on or the ability for people to move on, and that's not what, you know, that's often the problem, that somebody needs to be able to purchase a first home and have that move on. If the move on isn't there, then the first home never becomes available.
Okay, thanks. And my second question, which was about
Okay, thank you. And before I come to Councillor Peter Barrett for the very last question, can I welcome the Member of Parliament for Alloa and Grangemouth to the Chamber? Thank you very much. Councillor Peter Barrett. Sorry, Peter, can you hang on a bit? We're worried that we don't have sound again. Thanks. Members, we appear to have a problem in that only the 3 microphones at the top here are working, and we've hit a problem. We're hoping for the quick fix, so if I can ask that we take a short recess for 10 minutes to see if we can have the quick fix. If after that time it's still not fixed, we will break for lunch until 3:30. No, sorry, 2:30. Thank you. So 10 minutes to see if we can fix it, and if not, a break till 2:30. With all fingers and toes crossed that the glitch has been solved for good, or at least for the rest of this meeting, we will continue, and I will go back to Councillor Barrett Peter with the last question. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Provost, and I'll curtail my introduction to the question this time round. I think I would really like to hear from our Head of Legal Services on the final 2 bullet points of the lobby document, paragraph 5, regarding policies that deter STL operators or policies that lack fairness, and whether she has any concerns that either of those 2 would factor into the decision on the policy that we're making today, and what the likelihood of similar legal exposure would be.
Again, just to reiterate that it's been lumped in as if the policy that we're looking to adopt is the same approach that Edinburgh did on the aspect that was challenged, and it quite clearly is not. We've stated quite clearly in the report that our policy and our control area, there will be no retrospective application of that. So that is inapplicable. In terms of challenges around fairness and unreasonableness, as a local authority, we're always open to challenges of judicial review on that basis. However, we've heard from Nicola and we've seen in the report that this is going to be one tool. There's not going to be a blanket application. It will be considered on a case-by-case basis. We will strike the balance between the need for the to ensure that we protect the economy and the tourism infrastructure, but at the same time freeing up the opportunity, if possible, to protect the amenity and create opportunities for housing to be made available. And that's not necessarily affordable housing, it's just housing in general. So on that basis, if we have And there are a number of checks and balances still to go through. This is simply the request to go out to the public consultation, the formal public consultation. We then have another decision to make in this chamber, and it then has to go to Scottish ministers. So there's a number of opportunities for us to review and ensure that our policy is fair, and if there was a challenge, it could be robustly defended. So in that case, I do not see the risks that has been painted in section 5 of that document as applying to this particular policy at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see that you have a request in for a third question, Councillor Forbes. Is this your very last one?
I'm happily just let it pass, Provost.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will move to the Council Leader, Councillor Grant-Ling, to move the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. This report asks for our approval to commence the formal statutory process to introduce a short-term let control area for Highland Perthshire and northern part of the eastern housing market areas. It will introduce stronger and clearer planning controls to manage the number of new short-term lets across these areas. The introduction of a short-term let control area will require all residential property owners to apply for planning permission for change of use from a residential property to a short-term let. As detailed in Table 4 in the report, the introduction of an STL control area will have no new impact on many other property owners, as they already have to apply for a change of use. It will also not impact existing STLs, irrespective of the STL control area. The requirement for a licence remains. There are 2 other control areas already operating in Scotland. Firstly, across the entire city of Edinburgh and in the Badenoch and Strathspey ward of the Highland Council area. We need to learn from their experiences. However, we know through the development of our local housing strategy that the views of our communities about the availability and affordability of housing and the proportion of overall housing stock given over to short-term holiday lets is of concern. This impacts local people, but also the recruitment and retention of key workers in the local economy, including the tourism sector. We have already introduced measures to address these concerns, such as 100% council tax surcharge on second homes, and the council is also progressing the delivery of more housing in these areas through planning obligations on house builders and our own social housing investment programme. The short-term let control area is just another measure that will help. This report just starts the process, and I move the paper for your approval. We have heard from the tourism sector and the short-term let sector. We've also, the local members in these areas, have had written or emailed missives from both the development trusts in Aberfeldy and Dunkeld and Burnham, requesting that we do everything and use every measure within our power to enable local people to live and have a thriving community that is based all year round. So it was just to give these elected members know that, and they know that they've been asked. So it's good to just have both sides of what we're trying to achieve here. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I call on the Deputy Leader, Councillor Drysdale, to second the report?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Colleagues, this paper sets out clearly the officer recommendations to proceed with a proposal to designate Highland Perthshire and the northern part of eastern housing market areas as a short-term let control area. The report clearly sets out some compelling reasons why this council as planning authority deems it prudent and desirable to be able to apply measures to better regulate future requests to convert residential dwelling houses into additional short-term let accommodation. Foremost among these reasons are to protect both the supply of homes, to protect both the supply of homes to meet local housing need, including for key workers and those employed in tourism and hospitality, which are so vital to the vibrancy and economic stability of those areas, and also to preserve the amenity of residential areas. Our local housing strategy identified both a reduced housing supply and significant affordability concerns, particularly in these rural areas. Now, I am, of course, very aware that some Perth Kinross residents, some business owners and certain organisations, not to mention some elected members, are opposed to the council introducing new planning requirement to better regulate any further proliferation of new and only new short-term let properties. I do not seek to disregard these concerns at all, but it needs to be borne firmly in mind that we are only talking about seeking to better manage further growth in the number of short-term lets, not to close down any existing STL businesses. And any measures so to do would be in relation to the factors that Nicola has already set out today. However, I would reiterate that the primary driver for the recommendation in this paper is the need to address the housing supply issues that are identified. Should Council support this motion today, further steps will follow for public representations as regards possible modifications to the proposed control area before matters are submitted to Scottish ministers for approval. Deputy Provost, I'm happy to second the recommendations.
Thank you very much. And we now move to comment. Thank you. I see we have an amendment from Councillor Duff, seconded by Bailey Chris Ahern. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My amendment is simple. It is to note the contents of this report, but to reject the proposal for a short-term let control area. The same proposal came before the Economy and Infrastructure Committee in August 2024 and was quite rightly rejected then. Nothing has changed in these last 9 months to alter that position, and we should reject the proposal again today. Tourism is a major part of the economy in Highland Perthshire. The short-term let market annually generates £51.8 million gross value added for the Perth and Kinross economy and provides nearly 1,800 jobs. And as these figures were compiled 2 years ago, both the amount and the jobs total are certain to have grown. Since COVID, our tourism infrastructure, both hospitality and retail, have suffered greatly and have not yet recovered. Our main streets are still reeling from the impact of the pandemic and the cost of living crisis, and we can see that from the number of empty shops in our high streets. From speaking to local businesses, I know that they are desperate for more tourists, not fewer. Otherwise, more businesses will suffer and close. We need policies which attract tourists into our area, not make it harder for them to find accommodation. And I believe a vote for the motion is the wrong choice. And I worry that our economy will suffer badly, and along with it, local employment. It's not that long ago that we in this chamber approved a bid to make this exact same area the Tay Forest National Park. Remember that? National Park status would have significantly increased tourism for Highland Perthshire, and yet now the administration is bringing forward a short-term let control area. Quite frankly, you couldn't make it up. There is a housing problem within Highland Perthshire, yes. However, this is not a singular problem caused by short-term lets. The contributing factors are complex and many. Things like rent caps negatively impacting the rental market, the significant increase in single-person households up nearly 18% in the last decade, and second homes. I know of one development that wants to provide nearly 40 affordable homes right now that cannot currently go ahead because of the power company's inability to supply enough power to the site. We have a significant number of empty homes in Perth and Kinross. 3.5% are unused or second homes. A planning control area will not impact on these either. We brought in a council tax liability of 200% for second homes, and this is having an impact. In the last year, the number of second homes has reduced from 1,189 houses down to 986. The majority of the 203 houses have now been returned to residential accommodation, with only around 40 being reclassified as self-catering. So the 200% council tax policy is having a far greater impact on housing availability than a control area ever will have. Deputy Provost, I wasn't able to search the public register by housing market area, but a check of the public register in my ward revealed a total of 812 licences earlier this week. On further examination, 80 of these were registered as home sharing licences, meaning that these are homes already occupied as residential accommodation, with perhaps a spare bedroom being used for the occasional visitor. I also counted at least 294 licensed properties which are never likely to be residential accommodation. Places like the lodges at Taymouth Marina, Glengollandy Holiday Park, Mains of Taymouth Holiday Park, Lochte Lodges, the Ranach Club, the Kenmore Club, Bracken Lodges, the River Tilt Caravan Park, and many, many others. These figures vastly skew the data which is being used in this report to evidence an issue in Highland Perthshire and its surrounding areas. Figures which also shows that the actual growth in short-term lets is largely in other areas of Perth and Kinross. The crux of the matter is that we need to build many more new and affordable homes in the right places. We need to find ways of speeding up our planning procedures for new housing, supporting developers to make use of land which they have banked for development, encouraging more buybacks and returning second homes to residential use. A sizable proportion of the short-term lets in Highland Perthshire are large, drafty, remote properties which will never be the type of affordable home we need to see built. They're often too big, too costly to run, and so remote that the family will need a car to survive. If we discourage them from being tourist accommodation, they are more likely to become second homes, which will be the worst of both worlds, with neither residents or tourists occupying them, and this will have a detrimental impact on our extremely important tourism economy. Deputy Provost, I urge members to reject the proposal here before us today. Why is it that outside Edinburgh City, only one local authority has gone down this route? It's because the others realise that it won't solve the problem. A year into the control area in Badenoch and Strathspey, I am struggling to find any evidence that it has delivered a change, other than generating a lot of planning work and income for Highland Council. I urge members to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bailey Ahern to second the amendment.
Yeah, I'm just happy to formally second the amendment.
Thank you. We'll now move to comment, and I have first up for comment Bailey. Alistair.
Thank you very much, Deputy Provost, and thank you everyone for your contributions today. We've heard a lot of back and forth today about numbers, and for once I'm going to say this one isn't all about the numbers. This policy stands up for me whether it frees up 0.1%, 1% or 5.7% of houses for people to actually live in. Those people are the people who are going to cook and serve food in our hotels and restaurants to feed our tourists. Those people will be there to staff our medical surgeries and community hospitals when we need medical care. Those people will be there to volunteer with the fire and rescue service if we have the misfortune to need their help. Those people will have kids who keep our rural schools sustainable. Those people will be economically active members of these rural communities who are crying out for workers right now. Yes, of course, we need to build more houses too. Nobody's denying that. This policy doesn't come at the exclusion of additional house building, but that's not the matter on the agenda today. This policy has to be judged in a holistic way. This is the policy that prevents new housing being swallowed up right away as holiday accommodation. Let's also build more houses, but meantime, this policy is an essential part of that picture. So I'm all for the motion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. Councillor Rubbick, John.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I think it is right that we need to recognise the difference between holiday accommodation and residential properties quite clearly. But I do think this paper does that, actually. And I think it's also important, and there seems to be a consensus in the room today about this, it is important that we make progress, I would argue, to housing stocks being pre-right to buy levels, personally. And we are making a little bit of progress towards that in Perth Kinross Council under Councillor McEwen's stewardship. But my personal opinion is that where a property is clearly not holiday accommodation but is a residential property, is that we should look upon that as a home and not an instrument of profit or income. So I'll be voting for the motion.
Thank you. And Bailey McLaren, Claire.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Housing supply in Highland Perthshire is an issue which we're all recognising, and there is no one fix. We need many different approaches, and we are all working as elected members in any way we can to assist with this, bringing forward proposals, conversations, but I would also encourage the local communities to look at different options as well, because we're all trying to work for the same goal. And I have found this whole debate rather challenging, because I have still not quite made the full decision where I'm going with this, because I don't believe it's going to fully fix the issue. The issue is we need land, we need planning permission on available land to build suitable accommodation for the local communities. Thank you.
Not quite sure where that's coming from, but if we can proceed, Councillor Forbes, Angus, your comment.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This scheme makes a complete mockery of the suggestion that we heard a couple of weeks ago at scrutiny that we are a business-friendly council, and frankly anyone who votes for the scheme can never ever suggest we're here to support small local businesses, because that is now a misnomer. And if this thing passes, another thing we can never say again is that we make decisions based on evidence, because that ship will sail today. I've always supported our officers when they want evidence before they act. Even simple things like installing speed reduction measures have to be backed up by evidence, but it would seem that detrimentally affecting small businesses is a different matter altogether. There is absolutely no doubt there is a housing problem across all of Scotland, but this is not the solution. We need more houses. It's as simple as that. So my challenge to this administration is to build, and then build again. But let's look at some facts. There's no evidence at all this will bring any homes back to the market. We're not going to measure the success or otherwise of this proposal. We're already making life intolerable for short-term let businesses. We will not get the opportunity to assess if it's working and perhaps change tack in the future. And another reminder, short-term lets contribute 51 million GVA and support 1,757 jobs. Nothing has changed. This is back here because the administration don't like to lose. They don't like the word no. And based on an earlier comment from Councillor Lang about a school meal vote, I wonder if we've finally got clarity as to why this is back again. So I'll just gently remind Councillor Lang, the vote for the CPU has not only saved us money, but school meal take-up goes up year on year. This is political posturing of the worst kind. If something had changed, and debating this again is reasonable, but nothing has changed, let's not stoop to this sort of politics in Perth and Kinross, because I think we're better than this.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, Peter.
Thanks, Provost. I wanted to commend the movers of the motion and the movers of the amendment on the tone that they'd adopted, and I thought our debate was going to be characterised by that. So it's unfortunate that we've just had the contribution from Councillor Angus Forbes, which seems to kind of replicate the strident tone of the lobby document from the ASSC. I do actually have some sympathy with their position. As a number of speakers have said, clearly this planning control area isn't going to solve the affordable housing crisis. It's not going to do much to tackle the shortage of housing in Highland and Eastern Perthshire, and nor will it do a great deal about how unaffordable homes are for people in the area who, as we heard, want to move on from their first or into a larger home as their families grow. It's not going to be the solution for local people being unable to compete on price with the higher spending power of purchasers selling up in the central belt to move into the area. So it does feel a bit like sticking your finger in the dike to stem the flow instead of diverting pressure upstream. People, however, made similar points when it came to applying premiums to second homes, council tax levels and on empty properties, and to ending the right to buy for council houses. The refrain was always that this isn't the solution. The solution is simply just to build more homes. But we are living in a national housing emergency and a local housing emergency, not just a challenge, John. And the housing market is broken both for private ownership and in the private rented sector. So our response has to be multifaceted and multi-stranded. It would be great if our national governments applied political energy, prioritised funding and targeted resource towards tackling the housing emergency rather than merely warm words and yet more strategies. However, that's not the world we live in. And I do think that we owe it to local residents and to local employers to ensure that we try to make the best use of available housing supply and how that is considered. This isn't going to be an everywhere all at once, but it is another string to our bow in targeted areas, in this case Highland Perthshire and Eastern Perthshire, where our demand pressures are highest and new build rates are much lower than elsewhere in our area, and we need to consider those people's housing needs. We also need to be clear that we're not proposing or implementing a moratorium on short-term lets, far from it. What we are doing is establishing a means of considering the balance between shortage of housing against the economic benefits and disbenefits of the growth and level of short-term lets. I think that the telling parts of this report are the table in section 4, which states expressly who is going to be affected by the changes introduced by a PCA, and the statement of reasons which we have to submit to the Scottish Government in due course. I would urge members to vote for the recommendations of the report, not for crossing your fingers and hoping that someone else will do something else while we twiddle our thumbs. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I may have been most remiss, in which case I apologise, but Councillor Watt, you came very early for comment and I've forgotten about you. My apologies.
It's quite all right, Deputy Provost. When I first saw the document, my concern was regards farm diversification and the limitations that might put on that. However, I was quite pleased, contrary to what Fiona Campbell said, that shepherds' huts, caravans, agricultural buildings, bothies and residential annexes are not going to be covered by this. So I look forward to seeing a boom in these type of properties in Highland Perthshire. I'd also like to add that regards comments from Councillor Ford's about house values, I unfortunately have property next door to a party house, and I think my property would be worth a lot more money if it wasn't in that situation. So I will be supporting this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move to Councillor Braun. Bob.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I think this has been a very long and interesting debate by all sides. We all, I think, agree that there is a need for more affordable housing, whatever form that may take. I'm a ward member for one of the areas which we're talking about here, and certainly there is a demand for more affordable housing by people who've lived here or their children have grown up and wish to stay in the same area, and there aren't the properties here for whatever reason that there is. And also by chance, when we had this paper come forward to committee, I was actually sitting on it unusually, substituting for one of my colleagues, and at the time I voted against it then, and I have to say I'm not convinced there's been any change since then. Short-term lets obviously have a business value, and people obviously want to use them as an investment. And this comes back to another question of whether a home should be classed as an investment. It's one of those things we've done in this country, and one of the problems we have that we don't buy a house to be a home. It's seen as an investment, and that obviously forces prices up over a period of time. That doesn't happen in other countries so much, and there's a question mark over that, but that's for another day. The situation here is I'm not convinced that by putting a control area in, it's going to affect property prices. Property prices are affected by various factors across the board. Obviously, location is one, availability of funding is another one, many other factors, economic factors. So I'm not convinced, again, that doing this is going to make more affordable housing available in any way. It's going to affect the market. And the other point, which Councillor Duff touched on very briefly, was that many of these properties are in remote areas, certainly here, and they would be certainly unsuitable for key workers or any working families because of the remoteness. So to sum up, Deputy Provost, this came forward to committee. I voted against it then. I'm sorry to say I don't see anything in here which has caused me to think twice. So I shall be voting for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to Councillor McEwen. Tom.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I think I'll start things I'm going to see off with that short-term lets are an extremely important part of our tourist industry and are essential for the economies of rural Perthshire. However, there has to be balance. There has to be balance between that and the availability of any type of housing, whether it be affordable, whether it be mortgaged, whether it be the social housing that we provide as a council. There has to be balance there. If there's no balance there, then as others have said, Billy McLaren, Councillor Barrett has also said that we need people to work in these rural areas. Councillor Braun just said he didn't see key workers living rurally at Strathardle. So who's providing health and social care to these rural communities? People who live 10, 20 miles away. No, we need people in these communities providing health and social care for people who live in these communities, who have lived there all their lives for generations, who won't have access to health and social care because there's nobody in the area capable to live there, to work there. I'm glad to see that at Carmichael we now have outline planning permission that was passed at a recent committee, although I think there was an objection against that. We need to stop these objections and let outline planning permissions go ahead, look at the details and build houses rural. I keep hearing this word build houses, but I keep looking at the planning committee and seeing objections. The two things don't concur. Yes, we need more houses. Yes, I agree actually. I don't think this policy will create affordable housing, but it'll reduce the issues with pressure. Pressure on the housing system comes not just from the affordability and the availability of houses, but if a person who can afford £1,200 a month to rent a house can rent that house, then they're not taking a house of somebody who can afford the £800 a month, or the person that can afford the £400 a month. There's a knockdown domino effect of capacity within the housing system, and the short-term let properties remove that capacity from these rural areas. And it's only these rural areas that are currently suffering. Will this change in 10 years' time? It may do, and this policy can be reviewed as these figures change. There is that balance. You know, we have the hotels who can't get chefs. So people go on holiday to an area, they turn up at the local hotel to have a nice meal, and there's nothing on. You know, you can have a cheese toastie because we've not got a chef, because he's not in today. We can't get enough chefs. We've got restaurants desperate for staff. I've got a 19-year-old daughter at university who obviously does work during the summer. She could pick from 20, 30 jobs living in North Perthshire. Whereas our colleagues at university who live in the Dundee and Angus area struggle to get jobs because of the competition that they have. Second homes money, yes, we've done that really well. You know, we've bought houses in Dunkeld off the National Trust. That's doubled. Those houses doubled the number of houses for social rent in the Dunkeld area. Doubled it. Just that one purchase from the Dunkeld area doubled that money. And that just shows you how few social housing we have in these areas. You go to Dunkeld tomorrow and you'll be able to get a job. And why can you get a job? Because there's nobody there locally available for these jobs. We need these jobs. They will stimulate the economy. And it's not about suppressing the tourist industry. It's not about suppressing short-term lets. Because you're right, the expensive home that gets put up for short-term let, it'll go through the planning process, but it's likely to be approved, given it meets all the planning necessities. It's not going to be rejected because it's an affordable home. But an ex-council house in Blair Athol probably won't get approval because that should be there for affordable rent. That's what we're talking about. That's where the restriction will truly happen, not some of the fairy tale stories that we've heard said in the chamber today. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Welch, Jack.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This paper has been brought forward because this council administration is listening to our communities. Residents feel that the whole nature of where they live has been distorted by short-term lets. This negative impact of short-term lets has been caused by a combination of fiscal, regulatory and technological changes. The first two market distortions principally driven by the Tory party. This paper seeks to support these communities while ensuring that sustainable and thriving tourism sector which encourages entrepreneurial operators. Councillor Forbes referenced workers being bused to the House of Brewer. Maybe he wants workers being bused to a future Disneyland Dunkeld, because without short-term let tools, that is what could happen. This is about sustainable communities, not Mickey Mouse lobbying. I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. And we now come to the final comment from Councillor McCall. Sheila.
Thank you. I think Councillor Walsh has just succinctly made the points I was going to make. So I will withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duff, do you wish to sum up for the amendment?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I think members understand the issues as set out in my amendment. Highland Perthshire relies heavily on the tourist economy, and a lack of tourist accommodation and further increases in second homes will be detrimental to the local economy here. I could just also comment that Councillor Watt commented about farming diversification and mentioned non-residential properties such as shepherd huts, bothies, farm cottages, etc. These types of property do now and will still require to go through the short-term let process, and if approved today, the planning process within the planning control area. Deputy Provost, I urge members to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. And Councillor Leader, can I ask you to sum up for the motion?
Yes, I think we've heard that last comment by Councillor Duff repeated 2 or 3 times. I thought it was answered during the debate, and I think it's in the paper there. But first of all, I would like to point out to Councillor Forbes that this isn't done out of any sort of spite of a previous decision. It was just to show when that previous administrations have used the same thing to bring something back at a future date when they're able to change a decision of council. So it's perfectly legitimate, as it was legitimate back then. I'd also like to say that nobody said this is a silver bullet. It is one tool in the toolbox, but I think I'll just leave it there because Bailey and Councillor Barrett and others have summed it up much more eloquently than I could, and especially thank Bailey's interpretation of it. Not a man of many words, but when he says something, it's generally worth listening to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It will be time to move to the votes in a minute, but can I first thank all of those who have contributed to this debate by asking questions, making comments, and particularly to those who have answered our questions. Thank you very much. Now it's time to move to the vote, and can I hand over to Scott?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. We're dealing with item 9 on the agenda, short-term let control area, a report by the Strategic Lead Economy Development and Planning. We have a motion by Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Drysdale, to approve the recommendations in the report. We have an amendment by Councillor Duff, seconded by Bailey Ahern, to note the contents of the report, but to reject the proposal for a short-term let control area. When I call out members' names, if you can clarify if you're voting for the motion by Councillor Lang or the amendment by Councillor Duff. Bailey Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Allen.
Amendment.
Councillor Anderson.
Amendment.
Bailey.
Motion.
Councillor Liz Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Peter Barrett.
Motion.
Councillor Braun.
Amendment.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Carr.
Motion.
Councillor Chan.
Amendment.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Motion.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Forbes.
Amendment.
Councillor Frampton.
Motion.
Councillor Freshwater.
Amendment.
Councillor Harvey.
Motion.
Councillor Illingworth.
Amendment.
Councillor James.
Amendment.
Councillor Kugali.
Amendment.
Councillor Lang.
Motion.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Councillor Mayer.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McCall.
Motion.
Councillor McEwen.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Motion.
Deputy Provost.
Motion.
Councillor Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
Councillor Shires.
Amendment.
Councillor Colin Stewart.
Amendment.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
Councillor Watt.
Motion.
Councillor Waters.
Motion.
Councillor Welsh.
Motion.
And Bailey Williamson.
Motion.
Deputy Provost, we have 24 votes for the motion and 14 votes for the amendment, so the motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move to item 10 on the agenda, that being the matter of senior councillor remuneration. Can I ask council if they're agreeable to the changes to senior councillor remuneration as set out on the agenda? Can we agree? Agreed, thank you. We now move to item 11, the elected members' briefing notes. Can I ask council that we note the briefing notes issued to elected members since the last council meeting on the 5th of March as set out in the agenda? Thank you very much. That concludes today's business. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.